Facing the reality of our relationship, my husband's stance on not being responsible for giving Maine a break. Posting this on a throwaway because I truly just need to get this off my chest. I, 29 female, and my husband, 35 male, have been together for 10 years, married for 3, and have 2 beautiful children. I have a full-time job, usually working between 50 to 60 hours a week. My job is not stressful in a physical sense, but I'm a high-end manager, so I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, and it takes a toll on me. At the beginning of lockdown, my husband stopped working to care for our then 5-month-old and limit his exposure. At the time, we could make it work, and we both knew it was a temporary struggle. When we became pregnant with our second in 2021, I told him I needed him to return to work. Ever since then, there has always been a reason why he could not, usually boiled down to the kids. He's miserable at home, and I've been begging him to go back to work. Even if I need to change my working hours, or work remotely more often than I do to accommodate a second shift job for him, that it would help our financial situation and he'd feel better. But there is always a reason why he can't. Having said that, I work a minimum of 50 hours a week in office and probably 5 to 10 at home sporadically through night and weekends, but I do my very best to take some of the burden off of him when I get home. I immediately take over with the kids, we play, I make dinner, I handle the bedtime routine, and I get everyone up and fed before I return to work the next day. I'm not perfect by any means and I have a lot to work on, but I try my best. A lot of weekends James' fake name and the kids want to go out and do something as a family, and even though I am far too tired, I usually try to push through for the kids' sake. I battle severe depression, and I've been in a low lately that I believe is caused by burnout. Last weekend it was the anniversary of my mother's passing, and I was feeling a little extra emotional. I was at the end of my rope after work called me asking for help, and both kids were throwing separate fits. I snapped. I told James that I just needed an hour. An hour where I'm not needed ... as an employee, mom, wife, anything. Whether to play a video game or scroll my phone or take a shower where someone isn't jumping in with me ... All I asked for was an hour. James responded to me that it's not his responsibility to give me a break, and I need to figure that out for myself. I was taken aback and a little offended by this because I feel like a partnership we should be helping one another, and not figuring it out for ourselves. He responded with, I'm trying to teach you, no one is just going to give you what you want. Later that evening I got a call from my grandmother reminiscing about my mom and I was crying. James then told me he hadn't realized what day it was and apologized, so I thought that was that. Fast forward to yesterday. I was called into work for an 11-hour shift on Saturday, so I got a one-day weekend. I wasn't in a much better headspace, and my tipping point started by asking James to go to the store to get diapers before the kids woke up, and he refused to get up, putting the responsibility on me, and then proceeding to spend 5 hours. I am not exaggerating. I actually counted non-stop sorting through his Magic the Gathering collection. Sunday is usually our big cleaning day, and I was a bit fed up doing the cleaning and keeping the kids entertained alone. I know it is such a small thing, but in my overstressed and depressed mindset, it was enough to snap a little. I once again asked for an hour, and he once again told me that wasn't his responsibility. I told him he was wrong this time. He then snapped back at me that he's always with the kids and he never gets a break. He called me selfish for asking. I told him about going through his cards for the entire day, and he said that's work and not a break. I then mentioned that every day when I get home, the kids are watching TV and he's playing video games. I have no idea how long he plays before I get home, but I know he continues until I have dinner ready. He said that isn't a break because he doesn't even like video games. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm being unreasonable. I feel crazy because I feel like I'm not asking too much. All I know is I'm so tired of feeling this way. My stay-at-home dad husband will not keep the kids for an hour when I'm home because he says it's not his responsibility to do, and refuses to acknowledge the breaks he does take. Comments. Comment 1. Honestly, at this point I'd probably just claim I had to work an extra shift or extra few hours one day and take the break for myself. Obviously there are bigger problems if you need to do that to get any space for yourself, but you won't be able to face them with a clear head if you can't get any time to think about them. Comment 2. I'm petty AF. Everything is under your husband's name and your Mel. If you have a joint account and you're the only one working, move the money to a separate account, including future deposits. Even living with your dad for a month while you're not paying anything can help get a deposit. The only one affected by not paying is them. Your name isn't on anything, therefore you're not liable for anything. Consult a divorce lawyer. First consultations are usually free. See what your options are if you walk away from everything. As long as you have a place to stay, the kids can go with you. If he pushes you, call the police. Kick him out of the bedroom. If this causes him to cheat, then there's more ammo you can use in a divorce. It would help in the case of alimony. Update 1. Please see my last post if you want any additional context, but in summary, I 29 female and my husband 35 male have been together for 10 years and have 2 beautiful children. My husband doesn't work, and I'm an over full-time manager and a full-time manager and a full-time mom. For those wanting an update since the last post, it hasn't gotten better. But I've come to a realization that I've been checked out for a while, and the fights and problems he and I have don't bother me like they used to. I have actual dreams about leaving him, and I want to. I, however, feel trapped. Some points I didn't point out in my last post will cover that. We have 2 cars, both in his name as gifts from his mother. I pay the insurance and tags on my car, the 2016 with 250,000 miles on it that he ran into the ground driving for Uber for 2 years before COVID, but I have absolutely refused to pay for his newer 2020 car that I begged his mother not to get, because I knew I would be stuck with the payments. So both cars are technically his. When we bought our house, it was under a false promise his mom offered to watch the kids once she retires so James can return to work. This did not happen. She also co-signed for the home with my husband so we could get a better rate. So I also have no ownership of our house. I don't have anywhere to go. My dad has a small basement I could rent, but it adds over 30 minutes to my commute, and I do not know what I would do for childcare. Other than being unhelpful, he has shoved me, been romantic with me while I slept, and constantly gaslights me. I'm over it, but I feel stuck. I know it's unhealthy, but to cope, I'll usually have a couple 2 to 3 beers before bed, and he constantly berates me for being an alcoholic. There's probably more that I'm forgetting, but I'm just emotionally tired, and I'm not sure what to do. Update 2. Hi everyone. Please look at my page for my last 2 posts regarding the situation with my soon-to-be ex-husband. I just came here to quickly update the people of Reddit who have been very supportive and gave great advice. I told him I wanted a divorce. I told him I was done. It obviously didn't go well, and he's trying his usual manipulative tactics of crying and making steps to change, set up a psychiatrist appointment, to switch his medication, has a job interview lined up, etc. It is very hard and against my nature to not cave now that he's suddenly trying ... But I'm staying strong. I'm reminding myself that this has happened before we separated for 3 months after our son 4 was born for similar reasons. I'm going to my dad's this weekend so he can see his grandkids, but he just got divorced a few months back, so I plan to talk to him about options and what I need to know. I'm scared as hell because I don't know what I'm going to do about car, place to stay, kids, etc. But when I told him I thought him trying to have sexual relations with me while I slept because I couldn't say no was, and he continued to do it anyway. Or when he went to a strip club with his friends and expected a pat on the back from me and all of my friends, because he didn't get a blow from one of the girls. Or when he started nonchalantly telling people that he shoved me backwards into the couch, or on the bed mid-argument to my friends like it was normal. These are the things I'm reminding myself to stay strong during. We live in a 3-bedroom home, so I've made him move into the guest room while I get my ducks in a row. Now, for the next story. My mistakes, acknowledging how I ruined my wife's life, and the impact of my decisions on our relationship. I, male 43, try to do my best to provide for my wife, female 38, and 2 kids 3, 5, as well as my Mel, and would like to think I am doing a decent job. Over the years I worked to improve our family's living situation. Not only did I complete another bachelor's and recently master's in a STEM-related degree, I at the same time worked 2 full-time jobs while completing my second bachelor's, and put my wife through school as well. She completed a degree where she could make good money, 60-70 in a healthcare field that always has jobs available. But with the birth of our 2 kids, she has since gave up on her career to be a SOM for the time being. At first it was a struggle while I was finishing up my master's. Once I completed it, after our youngest turned 3, my career took a jump up and we are now able to afford our single-income household in a more feasible manner. We're far from rich but do okay for a single-income family of 4, a little north of 150,000 base bonuses. The past year life was overwhelming for my wife, so even though I now work 75% from home, I budgeted to hire a daytime nanny to help her around the house with 1 child while the other is in school now. My day starts every day around 5:36 a.m. I get the house ready for the day before the nanny comes at 8 a.m. I get our oldest up and ready for school, breakfast made, and plan out my day, bring our oldest to drop off, and be home in time to let the nanny in. My most recent task at work has me grounded for the next 2 months, meaning I am now 100% WFH. While this is nice, I am busy in meetings all day as my role manages teams on a global scale as I oversee projects for my industry. For the past 1.5 months, I realized my wife, as much as she says her life is stressful at home, starts at 10 a.m. I asked my mill and nanny if this was always the case after a week or so of WFH, and they both responded more or less. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later. My wife literally wakes up and cooks and then scrolls through her phone or shops from home. Which brings me to my gripe. I am glad I am able to provide her that sort of life since we both grew up lacking in means. I get the possibility of postpartum depression. The stress of having kids, the feeling of being unfulfilled, the fact that I probably am a shitty husband. But for what it's worth, everything is taken care of and then some. I manage the house's finances. She claimed she was too busy to do so. Pay all the household bills, I pay my own personal bills, I pay her bills, track and perform all the upkeep of our house, appliances, cars, pets, etc. And I also help pay for my mill's medical bills and car note. But apparently my life is on easy street compared to hers. I can't decompress to her because it seems like she always feels the need to one-up me. I had a bad day. But she had it worse because I'm lucky I got to go away and work. My feet hurt from walking all day during work travel, which is nothing compared to her standing and cooking with a child clinging to her. For the past 2 or so years, I've been told I ruined her life, her opportunities, etc. But when I reminded her of what she says, she denies and dodges accountability. My mill has brought me aside and stated she's noticed a change in both myself and my wife. I have a greater attachment to my kids and hell, I've hugged the dogs and talked to them more about my life than to my wife. I honestly feel like I am in emotional survival mode as I'm one step from moving up the career ladder, and one step away from finding love and comfort from the bottom of a whiskey bottle. I'm sure I'll be hearing from the manly men of Reddit about how I'm simping. But I'm not a machine. I just want to know and feel that someone I prioritize aside from my kids appreciates and loves me for what I do. I'm sure I'll hear from the stay-at-home moms of Reddit. Which is fine. I grew up in a single-parent mother household. It's not easy. And honestly, with the help of her mother and a nanny mon fry, for one toddler while another child is at school. Can you honestly tell me she's having the typical Sam experience? Because neither my friends or colleagues who are single parents can say she is. I'm sure the masses of holier-than-thou Redditors will consider this a poorly written fanfic. But it is what it is. TL Dr. Long story short, it feels as if my wife has checked out of our marriage. We're only roommates where she can still reap the marriage benefits. I'm not asking for her to throw herself at me all the time and let me do whatever I want. I really just want to be told I'm doing good, and just offer me some form of emotional comfort as simple as a hug. But I guess as the man who ruined her life, I deserve it. Comments. Comment 1. Pathetic in my point of view. He sees everything and acknowledges it, and even mentions how bad it would be for the kids to live in a house full of resentment. Everything he says is an excuse to not pull the trigger on divorce. The kids will suffer the most because they will see the parents' relationship as the optimized one. Comment 2. My mom, brother, and I operated as a single-parent family unit years before my dad finally left, was thrown out for the last time his mistress emailed my mother proof of his cheating. We just didn't realize it until he was gone that it really changed our life little in the long run. Update 1. 1. Never cheated. I do work in an industry that has a large female population, but I'm literally an open book with work, name colleagues and staff under me. She has access to my work agendas and correspondence if she really wanted to snoop. But on that note, she still doesn't know what exactly I do for a living at this time. 2. We as whole family, her parents and mine, have tried to get her to go to therapy, but she refuses or skirts around the issue. 3. Aside from my coming from a single mother household purse, my biological dad was present in my life. She has had both parents in a reportedly monogamous marriage for over 40 years. 4. I've tried to talk to her about everything and my own feelings, but again, one-upmanship tends to be the trend here. 5. What I am getting out of the marriage was asked. Now, aside from my 2 beautiful kids, I've been asking myself that same question. We have a near non-existent sex life mainly since last year. I always figured maybe it's part of depression or whatever she may be going through. Maybe I'm just not attractive enough, or just horrible in bed because of my health conditions. I'm not some supermodel husband, but temptation and opportunity does knock and I can perform still, but I never give in. Because as cliche as it sounds, I honestly do love my wife and want to only be with her. 6. I'll give credit where credit is due, as I don't want to sound biased when I say she wakes up and cooks. She cooks for everyone in the house. Myself, kids, Mill, and even Nanny. Aside from breakfast, she cooks all meals and snacks. I typically fast until lunchtime, and our oldest tends to eat a small simple breakfast in case they don't like what school serves that morning. She does load both the kids and her laundry, but seldomly folds and puts them up. I typically do my own, and the rest of my clothes I dry clean, because they're work clothes. She does keep track of our pantry and fridge, but after she makes the list, I'm the one who goes out and buys everything if not delivered. She does clean our bathrooms and house 50% of the time. The other 50 is done by either Mill or myself, or sometime Nanny if she feels like being extra helpful. 7. Prior to Nanny, my Mill was the main help for my wife up until she had unexpected medical needs. So I opted to hire a nanny to help them both, more so when Mill is having treatments and recovering. Update 2. I showed my wife my post the following weekend and she read it, and all the comments. Long story short, argument. She left our house to stay with her sister, and I've been a single parent since. It's sad to say, aside from the good nights to our kids, it's all pretty much the same routine. Nothing much else to say other than thank you for all the kind words of encouragement. Just need to add, this post got bigger than I expected from a venting post, but I've responded to a few comments. Nonetheless, thank you for the comments and DMs, and more so for the offers to let me ruin your life. Hey. It's been the highlight of my day-night as I sit here drinking with my dog while everyone else is asleep. It feels depressingly sad that I feel that I have to turn to random internet strangers for some sort of validation in my rant. My apologies in advance as I try to keep this as vague as possible. Update 3. Post-birth, our kids' pediatrician's office gave my wife those postpartum depression screening forms, and during the time of both she scored pretty high and was suggested to see a therapist. With our second child, she scored significantly higher, and I should say I made an effort to get her the help she needs. She refused, so entered mother-in-law and nanny for support. I know what people will think, but this is one of the reasons I am not 100% ready to just give up and file our life together away. Also, I know silently suffering in the near and long run of our kids' future will not add to a healthy atmosphere, but neither would a bitter and hate-filled divorce. I know some have compared it to the ripping off a bandage, saying it'll hurt at first but that pain goes away, but I'd rather try to spare my kids thinking that their parents ended up hating each other because of them, or something along those lines. I've told a few PPL I talked to in DM since my last post. A little more insight on my personal life. Prior to my promotion, I was a PM managing teams and budgets, so out of habit I planned for a lot of what-ifs. That being said, I made a number of contingency plans if sadly things went south. So yes, I have talked to a lawyer. 3 actually. Know our rights, and what each of us are entitled to. Have a draft settlement created and on hold until I feel I need to use it. I know what I want, and am willing to offer more than what is fair for our kids' well-being, but also have a plan if we end up going to court. It's 100% on me that I'm suffering in silence, but I'm too stubborn to just give up, so while I am venting, I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me. I endure it to keep the norm our kids know, ensure my Mill's treatments go uninterrupted, and of course the hope my wife would finally be open to give therapy a shot, and climb together to a better place. Thank you all again. I just wanted to update those who have been kind enough to check up via DM and comments. Apologies in advance for the lengthy post. It's a bit of irony and coincidence that I made a follow-up from the update on 06 May 2024 I made on my original post during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but I could really use another outlet outside of my therapist. My apologies if this isn't the storybook ending destroying of a relationship people were hoping for. Save you a read. Wife left. Came back like nothing happened. She made it about her. Nothing's changed. I'm continuing to be suffering mentally, knowing nothing will change while trying to keep it together for our kids. Lots of takeout. The day after she packed up and left, my wife attempted to come back and take the kids with her to her sister's. Naturally, I was against this, and thankfully so was her whole family, including said sister. Not only was it not fair to our kids for her to sweep them away into a home that's not theirs, but to put that financial and housing stress on the rest of her family since she doesn't work, and her sister and her family husband and 3 kids stays with their dad in the house they grew up in. After a little over a week of being away, I guess she cooled off, so she just decided that it would be fine if she walked in the door with her bags as if she just came back from Target. She came into my office while I was working and angrily stared at me while I sat on a conference call meeting with my team, and I couldn't just jump off as this is a busy time of the quarter for us. I guess that didn't sit well with her, because once I took off my headset and closed my laptop, she started yelling at me about how much I really don't care about her and her well-being overall. At that moment I couldn't do anything more than look at her and just shake my head. Mother-in-law came in after hearing my wife yelling and pulled her away, telling her to not bother me, while our nanny kept our youngest away from it all on the other side of the house. That night after the kids were put to bed, I sat in my office by myself with a drink as I had been doing for the past nights, and my wife came in. We talked. We argued. We cried. We drank. One thing led to another and we were in bed. I wish I could say that was our making up, but the next sobering morning as we laid there, she went on about how hard it was for her the time she was gone. Literally. It was about her struggles staying at her family house in her old room with her dad and sister's family. How lucky I am to be able to stay here and do this and that and buy this or do that, and not stress as much as they did. How easy my and everyone else's in our family lives are compared to hers, even though we had similar upbringings. My mind and heart broke that morning. I've been spiraling down since then, and this last week I made another attempt to reconcile and talk things out. But I was met with a shouting match while trying to express my current stress and anxieties with life and work in general. Wife. Well, do you know how hard this is all for me? You're supposed to help me be happy me, so when it comes to my happiness, stress, needs, and overall well-being, FK me, get over it, right? Wife, we all have our own problems, you need to figure it out and get over them. I don't know who the woman I am at home with is, but that wasn't the woman I married and vowed to spend my life with and raise our kids together. Since that conversation, I've been noticeably distant with her. I've been sleeping in my office or on the couch, or with my kids in their bed after putting either one of them to sleep. Still doesn't change her starting her day at 10 a.m. and sitting on her phone talking to her mom groups between cooking meals with the kids in both mother-in-law and nanny's care. Nothing has changed, and I doubt that anything will change. Sadly, I think even if we got a divorce, nothing would change or feel different anyway, since during my wife's leaving the days seemed like any other day except with a little more takeout than usual. My main fear there isn't that I wouldn't just lose my wife, I'd lose my kids in the process. So I guess it's sad to say the grand finale to my story with, like a lot of men, and some women I've talked to here, I'll just continue to smile and suffer in silence. Now, for the next story. The moment my toxic boss realized his manipulative tactics no longer work and started to panic. I've stopped being the office doormat, my boss can tell I'm on my way out, and now, he's trying to be nice to me to get me to stay. I've been applying to new jobs since October, and although I don't have one lined up yet, I'm at the point where I no longer care if I get fired from my current job. I'm leaving because of my toxic, narcissistic asshole of a boss. For reference, I'm 28F, and he's 40SM. I have heard him promise the world to other employees, only to call them stupid or pathetic as soon as they're out of hearing range. And I know he does the same with me. In fact, a few weeks ago he gathered all my coworkers in his office just to talk about how I'm stupid, lazy, and don't know what I'm doing. To be fair, I don't, but only because there was no training, and nobody else here knows how to do my job. Especially him. Other things my boss has done is yell at me in front of my coworkers because I didn't let him know when he was CC'd on an email. Give me the worst employee review I've ever gotten, because I don't talk to him about my personal life enough. Tell me that despite my poor review, he approved my holiday bonus for $200, and then complained that his was only $10,000. Hug me when I told him I don't like being hugged. Tell me I need to smile more. He also asked me once if anyone's ever given me a hickey. Yes, I reported this to HR. No, they didn't do anything. Get my coworkers to spy on me. One of them, who I thought I could trust, would always come to me and talk about how much he hated our boss, and as soon as I said anything in agreement, he would run to our boss and tattle on me. This coworker also reports to my boss everything I say. The other day I was talking on my phone, telling my friend that I wish my boss and coworkers didn't gossip about me so much. Well, my coworker heard this and immediately told my boss. For most of the year I've been working here, I just tried to stay positive and try my best to get through this. But no more. I don't smile at all, even when my boss tells me to. I respond to everything with one-word answers. He keeps asking me what's wrong, and I only say nothing. Now the department is gossiping about me more, but they're in a panic. They keep asking each other if they think I'm leaving, and if so, they will not be doing my job, which is funny, because I've heard them say in the past that I don't do anything. My boss now has been talking loudly from his office, saying things like, "My name is such a good employee, he's been complimenting me on finishing tasks he's never complimented me on before. He keeps telling me he likes my hair." And one day he sat down in my office and told me point blank that I'm not allowed to leave. Someone in a different department told me that he's terrified I'm going to leave. Well, fuck him, because I am. This week I'm supposed to hear back from several places I've been interviewing with, so wish me luck. Comments. Comment 1. I would absolutely fuck over that tattletale. When you are ready to give notice, a few days before, fake a personal phone call that you did not get the job offer and that it looks like you are trapped, and what a shithead your boss is. Just how miserable you are. How much you hate the company. How your coworkers spy on you. Let the boss call you out in a meeting. Then tell him you have another job lined up and will be leaving. Walk out the door. Everyone will blame him for you leaving. Boss will blame the spy. Comment 2. God, my last boss was like this smaller company, so no HR and just dysfunction up and down. I was there for almost 3 years and he was so pissed I was leaving he didn't come in on my final day. My old coworkers still text me, and it was immensely satisfying to hear how immediately he regretted my departure. Took almost a year to replace me. Update. In the few days since I originally posted, my boss only became more obnoxious. He said loudly to another coworker that I'm super smart. He also proudly ran to my office to tell me that he'd just done something that's usually my job, just to help me out, even though I would have just done it myself if he'd asked me to. But he didn't. Also, in the past, he would get mad at me if I arrived or left the office without properly greeting, saying goodbye to him. I stopped doing that for about 2 weeks, but he never said anything to me about it like he usually did. The one coworker I kind of trust told me that after I went home one day, our boss sat down at his desk, looking like he was feeling sorry for himself, and said, "My name is completely checked out, but I don't know what to do." He also made a big stink about my birthday. My birthday is at the end of this month. Our receptionist always posts a monthly birthday list in the kitchen showing the names and birth dates of everyone who had a birthday that month. She got my birthday wrong, which I honestly did not give a shit about. But my boss made it into such a big deal that she came into my office to apologize. I had no idea what she was talking about until she said that my boss had been upset that she'd gotten my birthday wrong and told her to fix it ASAP. He also came into my office and said that he'd marked the date on his personal calendar and was acting all excited about it, even as I just stared at him with a blank expression. Honestly, I've wondered why he's so desperate to keep me here. Especially since he said on numerous occasions that I don't know what I'm doing. But honestly, I think he gets off on ordering others around and telling people what they did wrong, and enjoys having been able to shout my name from his office and have me running over to him like an obedient little lap dog. Last week I did hear back from one of the jobs I've been interviewing with, but they told me they didn't have any definite answers for me, and asked that I wait until Monday, which is today at the latest. Even though I still didn't have an offer, on Thursday I packed up all my shit and deleted all my browsing history, while my boss had stepped out of the office. We work in contracting construction, so he sometimes leaves the office to go out to the field. Then I sat at my desk, arranged some of our job folders on it so that it didn't look too bare, and mostly played solitaire for the rest of the day. He did come back, but he didn't notice anything, and the day progressed as usual. But the next day, on Friday, I didn't feel like coming in, so I called out sick. My coworker said that he came into my office and did notice that all my stuff was gone, and apparently flew into a panic. He thought I wasn't coming in on Monday today, but I did. I wanted to just ghost him when I finally got an offer, but I didn't get the opportunity to. When I came in this morning, he immediately came to talk to me. He told me that he knows I'm unhappy, and asked me what's wrong. I just kept saying, nothing. Even so, he asked me what he can do to make me happy. Push back my start time in the morning? Give me a raise? I said no to both of those. He then said that he knows I'm on my way out, and asked if I could stay until he found a replacement. I probably should have accepted a raise until I got an offer, but the thought of staying here for a day longer was honestly unimaginable. So I kind of just blurted out, "I'll stay until the end of today." He looked shocked by that. After a few seconds, he asked if I could make a list of everything that's on my plate. I said sure, but I'm not going to do that. Before he left my office, he kept asking me if there was anything he did wrong. When I said nothing, he said that he wanted to know so that he could change for the better. All I said was, I don't think anything's ever going to change here. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of telling him, "Oh well, here's why I think you're an asshole," because he would have denied it. Also, he has a group of yes men surrounding him at all times who stoke his ego, and they would have told him that I'm the one in the wrong. He stepped out again to go out to the field, and I went and spoke with our HR rep. All I told her was, "Look, I don't expect anything to be done about this, but I just want you to know that my boss is the reason I'm leaving." To my surprise, she did take it seriously and asked me to elaborate. They did just hire a new director in the HR department, so maybe that's why she decided to take me seriously? Iggy. Either way, I laid everything out for her. I told her that my boss doesn't respect me. I told her that I get that gossip is a part of every office, but I draw the line when I hear my boss talking shit about me to all my coworkers. I also told her that I feel like I'm being spied on by the office snitch, and that I can hear him reporting everything I say and do to my boss. She asked me if I had another job lined up, and I said no. The HR rep said that she would be talking about this to our CEO later this week. Whether or not she actually will, I've no idea, but I'm just glad I'm done. Well, word quickly spread around here that I'm leaving, and a coworker who I barely know, she works on another floor in a different department, came up to talk to me. She asked me if I'm leaving because of my boss, and I said yes. She said that he's the reason she transferred to another department. Apparently, she used to work directly for him, but one day, while he was out of the office, she called her husband briefly from her office phone right before she left for a work conference. She doesn't know if the phone was bugged, or if my boss had access to her calls, but apparently he found out about this call and freaked out because he didn't recognize the number she was calling. So at 4 a.m., he made one of his superintendents swing by the office building after he was done with work our crews pave, until around 4 or 5 a.m., go into her office, and look at her call history. The superintendent did this, but accidentally hit call on my coworker's husband's number. So the husband received a call from his wife's workplace at 4 a.m. and freaked out, because he'd rightly thought something bad had happened to his wife. He ended up calling his wife's cell repeatedly until she picked up. She contacted our 8 guy, who was able to see from the office cameras that it was our superintendent that came into the office, and when he was confronted about this, he told them everything. Even then, my boss denied that he ever made our superintendent do this. So yeah, the dude's crazy, and I'm glad I'm out. The day's still young, so I'm still hoping I hear back from my prospective new job today. Now, for the next story. My stepmom's Reddit account, and the heartbreaking revelation of her hatred for me and my siblings. I'm really pissed off. In one event I even cried reading the things she said, and I don't know what to do. I don't need any advice. I just want to vent. My father has been married to my stepmother for 5 years. He has been divorced from my mother since my younger brother was 2 years old. There is no beef between them and they have a great co-parenting. I have a 17-year-old sister, a 16-year-old brother, and I'm 25. Then my father has a 3-year-old son with my stepmother. I found her Reddit account in a pretty random way. Since I'm only home on the weekends, I let her use my computer. She forgot to close her email because I was able to come home during the week. She doesn't post too much, but she comments too much. I was honestly going to close the email, but it caught my attention that all the replies were from in-step parents subreddit, so curiosity won me over. I know it's not a good thing to do, and curiosity killed the cat. The first thing I saw was her last post, in which she detailed things about my life in a random Reddit sub, criticizing my decisions and even lying to get people to support her. She has posts on that site talking about how happy she feels when my siblings are not at home. My sister adores her, but she has comments talking about how she can't wait for them to turn 18 and leave the house, because she just wants to share the house with her family, my father, and her toddler. It seems that she doesn't see us as her family. She has a lot of comments answering other people that it's totally okay to not love your stepchildren because they're not family, and it's okay not to consider them one. She has comments talking about how much it bothers her when my dad and brother have sleepovers. They just watch a series in the playroom, and then go to sleep, as she is tired of hearing the laughter of a teenager, and can't wait until we all leave the house so my father can be with his real family. But what she hates the most is having to learn sign language for my little sister. It had always seemed strange to me that SM still struggles with sign language, but now I know that she never really put in the effort to learn. My sister always said that for many people sign language is very difficult, so I never said anything. But now I know that she always found stupid to learn how to communicate with my sister, when my sister always tried to help her. I was too surprised by the hatred she has when my father spends time with me and my sister. Her jealousy towards us is so obvious that it disgusts me that there were so many people who told her how they feel the same way about their SDS. To the point of sexualizing things, is saying too much disgusting things that I don't even want to say here. My siblings are not problem children. They even love her very much. And what fills me with anger the most is that she is so false in front of us. Do you know the number of times I offered to babysit my half-brother, so she and my dad can go on a date? All those times she refused to let me take care of him, but now I saw comments that she left about how I am living at my father's house and I don't help her at all. Only for other people to respond saying that she should give my father an ultimatum to make me leave, because I'm too old to live with him and he has a new family. I cook my food, do my laundry, I help my father pay the bills while she doesn't tea, and normally only come home on the weekends, because I'm doing a police academy almost full week. I don't even care if I'm making too obvious who I am. It was my father who told me to move back with him so that when I come back from the academy on Friday nights it will be a shorter trip. She sexualizes my interactions with my father, saying that it is not normal for me to sleep a nap hugging him and that I should know my place. He is my father. What the hell wrong with her? I'm so disgusted. I have the comments, I have the post. I have even comments for him years ago. And I will use them, I don't care. Comments. Comment 1. I am so glad someone called out that vile sub which encourages child abuse and cheating. If they succeed at abuse, then post it as a victory and are being smug about it. They hate step-kids, portray mothers as high conflict and accuse daughters of flirting with dad. In fact, this is not the first instance where a crazy stepmother accused the daughter of flirting with dad in order to manipulate him. I was shocked when I read that post on Reddit. It is still here, BDTDU. Also, they get pregnant in order to steal the dad away from the family and many times make the dad move far away so he won't have custody, and less visitation time of dad is at fault too. Comment 2. I remember having a chat with friends about it. We would date a single parent. One believes he is not wired for it, and so will never date one. A few said WTF. The simplified version of the discussion was that he didn't think he could put in the effort children would need, and that it wasn't fair to the child, or the mother, to build a relationship with the possibility of him wanting out. I definitely agree. If you know you don't want your partner's kids, find a partner that doesn't have kids. Update 1. I have screenshots of everything, including a video showing that it is her email and showing the comments. If she sees that post, what will she do? Delete the account. I already have the proofs. But I don't want my siblings to find out before I tell them. And I know that those types of posts usually end up in those TikToks that re-upload posts without permission, so I prefer to delete the post so that it doesn't stand out even more. Although my siblings don't use Reddit or that kind of content, I'm going to post again in that sub when I talk about everything with my family. So I hope Redditors know how to keep the secret of the post. For now I know they won't, hahaha. Being a stepmom is hard. Yes, one thing is feeling that you're having a hard time, and another totally different thing is making a post saying that you hate it when your stepdaughter is around her father, because you think she's going to FK him. It is not the same to say being a step-parent is stressful than to say honestly learning SL is unnecessary. BC, when the girl turns 18 I will not see her again. It is a waste of time since she can read lips. Also, some people complained about me hugging my dad. I also take a nap hugging my mother, or my siblings. I'm sorry for having a family that loves me, and are not perverts who see a hug as something sexual. Probably next week I will be able to maybe give an update. The academy keeps me working almost all day. Update 2. I told my dad that I was staying at a friend's house when I left the academy, but I actually went to my mom's house and told her everything. She doesn't even know what Reddit is. That site isn't used too much here. But I translated the comments and posts for her. I showed her the videos and my mom was furious. I explained to her that in the comments BM it's Madre Biologic. I was confused about it too the first time I read that. Also with SM, so my SM also made comments and posts complaining about my mother, being that they have always had a cordial treatment. But still my SM was lying, saying that my mother was troublesome. No one in the comments said anything. Everyone supported her and they recommended that she should move far away with her legal family, far away from the problematic BM and kids. First we told my brother, who was also upset, and said that she was a fake, but that he has seen her ignore my sister and pretend that she does not see or hear her a lot of times. He explained that like me it also seems strange to him that SM has not yet learned sign language. My siblings spend a lot of time at my father's house. Just like English or Spanish, sign language is much easier to learn if you live with someone who uses it every day. Therefore it is strange that SM doesn't use it. He said that even my father has offered to pay for her classes, but she says she doesn't have time. We asked him if he noticed any other behavior of that kind, and he said that SM doesn't let him take care of our younger brother, which she also does with me, but curiously she does let our sister take care of him, so I don't understand that. Other than that, she's never treated him badly or anything like that. At the time of telling my sister, she was the most hurt. She cried, especially because of SM's comments towards me, calling me a whore. It's kind of ironic how the comments towards her affected me and the comments towards me affect her, haha. Something that my sister noticed that I didn't is that almost all of SM's comments are criticizing me, my sister and even my mother, but of my brother she has only criticized sleepovers, or when he comes back late from being with his friends. But she has criticized my and my sister clothes, made up things about my life, confessed that she hates it when we hug our father, she said we're too clingy, she talked badly about my mother, etc. My sister said it's sexist and maybe she's got some mental problem. My sister said she always believed SM didn't really hear her, and she maybe wasn't speaking well, and didn't understood her. I think that's the shittiest thing of all. My sister's greatest pride is being able to pronounce some words no matter how short they are, or if they sound like noise for some people. We understand her, but SM made her feel insecure every time she ignored her. I know that my sister always justified that by believing that it was her mistake, and that SM made an effort to learn, but it was simply more difficult for her, but now we know that no, she was never interested in learning. I'm getting mad again as I write this, sorry. My mother said she was going to talk to both of them, mainly because even though it's an anonymous site, SM's way of expressing herself is sick, and she's not going to let my siblings be around someone like that. Oh, but she's venting. Being a stepmom is lonely. I received comments like that. It's not the same to say I feel lonely and I feel stressed than to say my stepdaughter behaves like a slut. Just because me and my minor sister uses a bikini for the pool. Her account is old, she's been leaving comments like that for years. With lies, with complaints we never heard before, it's just messed up. We arranged that we're going to tell our father all together and show him everything, so we're probably going to tell him tomorrow. Because I need to leave to the academy on Monday. My SM account is not deleted. It's crazy how she makes things up to get approval from strangers. At this point I don't even know if she's crazy or a mythomaniac. I would like to go back to her email since the password is saved, but I don't know if she will receive a notification of that, because this time I closed the account. Update 3. We talked to my father over the weekend. For now he is staying at my mother's house. It is a complicated situation since in the middle of everything is my half-sibling too. During the weekend I went to my father's house and the first thing I did was tell my stepmom separately that I've seen her Reddit account, and I'm going to talk about it with my dad. She told me that I can't condemn her for something she uses as an intimate diary, but I told her that this is not a diary. It is a social network where she makes her problems and lies public. If someone other than me discovered her account, then what was going to happen? Were they going to believe all the things she invented? If her identity was revealed on that account by someone else, I would have too many problems and could even be kicked out of the academy. Again, there's a big difference between saying I'm stressed and my stepdaughters behave like sluts around their father. I simply told her that my mother and sister also know it, and would come to talk about it too. She, for obvious reasons, just went to lock herself in her room, not wanting to talk with me. Once we talked to my father, I showed him most of the posts and comments. There were so many crazy comments that I think it would take me too long to read them all. Because they were just so long too. She's that kind of people who comments the bio of their lives in the posts of other people. My father got angry. My SM never expressed having a single problem with us like that. The situation would be different if we knew what she thinks about us. My father went to look for my SM, who refused to talk about it, and was mostly angry with me for violating her privacy. My father told her that she's insane for thinking that my sister and I sexually provoked him. That he can't believe the way she talks about my sister and the happiness she expresses every time my sister goes to the hospital and is not home. How she expresses to be counting the days until my sibling stops going to the house forever. My father told her that she knew that he is a father and that he would never leave us aside. She made her decision, and even so, instead of talking about her problems, she decided to create an account to play at being a victim. She said she needs a place to vent, but he told her that venting is not the same as telling lies. Venting is not the same as hating your stepdaughters and talking horrible things about them, and she could have spoken about it, and not just lie. They argued a lot, but it didn't get anywhere. Because she kept defending herself, and my father only told her that it was over. My mother told my father that she is not going to let my sister and brother be around a woman who is clearly mentally unstable, because no normal person thinks like that. After arguing too much and even trying to make SM understand that what she did is wrong, she just justified herself all the time. My father went with us and told her that he is going to come back just to see my brother every day, but that he no longer trusts her and never saw that side of her. She lied for so many years. Nothing really went as I expected, because I expected her to be more mature. I think I at least hoped that she could apologize, but I think she doesn't even think that what she did is wrong. In her mind, everything was totally justified, because being a stepmother is difficult, but nothing justifies her being so cruel and poisonous. But yeah, that's what happened. I think it's hurtful to know that someone can hide that much darkness inside. I wasn't too close with her, but I liked her, to the point of sharing my clothes and things with her, so I also feel sad about it, mostly for my dad. Now, for the next story. My husband's journal, and in it he says that he hates me and hopes I die. My husband has kept a semi-regular journal throughout our 4-year relationship. He does not keep it hidden, and up until now I have always respected his privacy. We had a heated conversation and my gut told me to read it, so after he left for work I did. He wrote several times that he hates me, and at one point he said when I was sick, he hoped I would die. When I read those words I packed up me and our baby, and went to a friend's where I'm staying now. I took pictures of all the pages. I told him I just need some space to cool off after our conversation, and I will be home soon. I booked with my therapist and contacted a lawyer. We had a rough patch recently that lasted about 2 weeks. It was a dark time, but we pulled through. There was no violence, no moments where I was afraid of him, just sincere conversations about difficult feelings. The notes of hatred correspond with that rough patch. The rest of the journal is tame and reflects the man I know and love, mostly little self-pep talks around work and family stuff, goals, habit tracking. He has sent me several warm messages since I left. He says he's glad I'm taking space for myself, that he looks forward to reconnecting when I come home, it's okay to have little hiccups, that he loves me, etc. I was sure our relationship was over the moment I read that he hates me, or even the moment I felt the need to violate his privacy, but the warm messages and the rest of the journal have me wavering a little. I understand the need to blow off steam when things are tense, and journaling is a healthy way to do that. But never in even our darkest moments have I fantasized about his death. Splitting up maybe, but this feels so sinister. I don't know how I could ever feel safe around him again. Is this just healthy venting and I'm overreacting here? Has anyone else had similar thoughts about a spouse that they then got over? Or is this a man I need to protect myself and my baby from? Edit to add context, the rough patch was about his feelings for another woman. He didn't cheat, but his friendship with her makes me uncomfortable. The part of the journal where he says he hates me was written as a love letter to her. He says he thinks about me dying and being replaced. Told her husband and I had a rough patch, and he wrote in his journal that he hates me and hopes I die. Wondering if this could just be healthy venting, or if not, what steps I should take to protect me and my baby. Comments. Comment 1. He wishes you dead. And no, you are not overreacting. That is how he feels about you. All the other is an act. Girl, check if he has taken a life insurance on your name with him as beneficiary. Comment 2. He will temporarily be even more dangerous once he realizes you're leaving, and especially once he realizes it will cost him a lot of money. Child support, divorce attorney. No matter how sweet he acts, please don't be alone with him at all. Be very aware of your surroundings. Update 1. I took a commenter's advice and sent the pictures to a trusted friend. She pointed out that a passage I initially read, as every day I think about telling her, actually very clearly says killing her. I guess my brain couldn't comprehend that at first. I received a ton of helpful perspective and support. But that comment in particular might have saved my life. After I digested that, I called a crisis line, and they were quite helpful in talking me through the shock. They also put me in touch with a center that's helping me get more affordable legal help. Bought some more time for my husband. Told him I'm enjoying getting out of town, and I'd like to stay an extra night or two. I have therapy tomorrow and an appointment with a social worker to make a safety plan. I feel like I have a good crew of family, friends and professionals supporting me. Absolutely zero regrets now about reading his journal. My gut told me something was off, but I couldn't have imagined a worst-case scenario as bad as this. I'm so glad the inner alarm bells were louder than my conscience this time. Nothing about this marriage is worth risking my life to salvage. Told her I initially misread a part in the journal that says he thinks every day about killing me. Will be keeping myself out of the news and staying the hell away from him for good. Update 2. A 2. At the suggestion of the social worker, I reported his journal to the local police. And that was, unsurprisingly, a 1/10 experience. The officer I spoke to chided me for reading his journal. Spoke about his reasonable expectation of privacy and basically threatened to tell my husband I had reported him. I had to firmly advocate for myself and stress that I was afraid for my life. It was an awful conversation, but now there is at least a record which includes photos of the journal. The family lawyer I spoke with advised me to file a protection order right away. The order would ban him from all contact with me and our child, bar him from our residence, my workplace, and any other places I request. He would then have to prove to a judge that he is a fit parent to be able to see his daughter again, and then we would go to mediation to try and agree on what visitation would look like. Another wrench in this situation is that we own a business together. I have an appointment with another lawyer this week to discuss what my options are there. The business was my idea. I'm confident I can run it without him. And I want to. But he's put a lot of time into it, and it's the main source of income for both of us right now. It's a good moneymaker, and I'm worried he'd fight me tooth and nail on this. We take turns going in, so I went as usual on Saturday, with a friend and a baseball bat. I continued my act of intending to reconcile, doing video calls with the baby, etc. While I was at our workplace, I found another journal. Page after page love letters to this other woman going back months. The progression from I liked seeing you at the grocery store to I drove past your house was wild. He writes about how he's deeply in love with her, can't wait to marry her, etc. He wrote about every interaction he's ever had with her, and the poor woman seems completely innocent and oblivious. Even what he perceived as flirting seems like basic politeness. He mentions a few other times that he wants me to die. The most recent entry was from the day before. He writes to her that he thinks I might be breaking up with him. But that's fine because he never liked me that much anyway. If he's upset about anything, it's just about losing the house and how the breakup will be perceived by our friends and community. Curious if people think I should warn the other woman. It's my instinct not to. At least not before the ink dries on our impending paperwork. I was already concerned about how he might react to being served with the protection order. Most worried that he might try to sabotage our business, or trash the house. Given how preoccupied he seems to be with his public image, I made a plan to confront him about the journals and use the protection order as leverage. Here's how it went down. I left the journal and my baby with my friend and went to our house with 2 trusted male friends, and the baseball bat. They waited on our porch. I told my husband that if they heard anything louder than a speaking voice they would come in with the bat. I told him I had to tell him something he wouldn't like to hear, and he needed to know that I had already taken steps to protect myself. I told him I read the journal, specifically what he said about wanting me to die, and thinking every day about killing me. I said I had taken photos, that they are backed up, and a trusted source also has copies. That I also have the original copy of the journal full of love letters. I wondered until this moment if he had intended for me to find them, but he was obviously blindsided. He tried to say it was just venting. But I told him I would not be taking any chances or entertaining anything he has to say about it. That after reading what I read, I will never trust him, or feel safe around him ever again. I told him that no one that knows him knows about this yet. The men on the porch just know that I'm breaking up with him, and need support. This was true. Aside from the friend that I called to stay with, and the other friend I sent the photos to, who lives on the other side of the country. I said I am willing to protect his reputation here if he cooperates with me. I told him that I don't even have to ruin his chances with the other woman, but I can. I said that he can either do what I need to feel safe, or I can have that safety court ordered. He asked what I wanted, and I said I wanted him to give up the business. We'll sort out the details after I speak to the other lawyer, but for now I want his keys and I'll be changing the passwords on everything. He didn't put up any kind of fight. He didn't want to hear anything about what it would look like to go through the courts. He didn't ask about our baby. He just calmly got up and got the keys and asked if I wanted anything else. I told him that any communication with me should be about separation logistics only, like arranging a time for me to collect the rest of my things. Since then he has been blowing up my phone, saying I know his heart. Let's walk back from the edge. Let's talk to a therapist. He's sorry his words hurt me, etc. Each time I just tell him he's crossing my boundaries, and he backs off. He apparently told his mom and sister everything, and they're supporting him and getting help. He's been cooperative so far. He's interviewing for a new job, seeing a therapist and updating me on his movements, though I didn't ask for this. I've temporarily moved in with my parents. My commute to work is longer, but I have help with baby and home-cooked dinners. Starting to settle into new routines, doing so much therapy and yoga. I inherited a small cabin before my husband and I met. It is currently being renovated and the original plan was to move in there with my husband and baby when it's done. The cabin is actually in my mother's name because she's never trusted my husband, correct, and wanted me to shield it from him in case of a divorce. Thank you, Mom. So I will have a permanent home for me and baby very soon. The dust still needs to settle, and it could get worse before it gets better. But I'm optimistic at this point. I'm confident I'm going to come out the other side of this as a badass single mom with an incredible child, a thriving business and an adorable little home. Honestly, the thought of having all those things on my own without my husband is so freeing. I've got a great village supporting me. Thank you all so much for being part of it. Teldra confronted my husband about the journal, with backup. He's going to step away from our shared business, and stay out of my life. Have a protection order ready to go if he acts up. Now, for the next story. My husband poured our daughter's ashes into the toilet and threw her urn at me. I'm feeling sad, alone and terrified. My head hurts. My heart hurts. I feel so alone and I don't know where to turn to. I had to spend the night in my car last night. I couldn't sleep through crying, trying to stay warm enough and thinking that somebody was going to suddenly appear at the windows. I've been trying to find a place to park up so I can try to sleep today and I've found a place but I can't rest. I feel so empty and scared. I don't want to go into much detail here, but our daughter passed away very suddenly last year. My husband and I both got help, and have tried to work through it together. But his drinking is bringing more and more out of control. It got to a point where he started to try to hide it, but it was making his behavior worse. I had a breakdown 2 months after our daughter passed, and I hadn't been to work since. I had quite a bit put away in savings, and some money I inherited, so I was using that to contribute at home while I have tried to get myself back in better health. In January my husband started on his sobriety journey, but his business started to suffer. There were some difficulties through the lockdowns, and we both worked hard to make sure the business made it through. He took out a loan earlier this year, and I gave him the rest of my savings and started back at work. Things were going well with the business, and as well as they could have been for us, until he relapsed last month and was hiding it from me. I lost my job 2 weeks ago, and have been looking for work since. It's been stressful, but nothing we couldn't have managed. Yesterday I got home and my husband was already home and was very drunk. It was a very loud and out of control kind of state he was in. He was slamming around the house, saying he was looking for something. I couldn't get much sense out of him, and he was really irate. I didn't really know what to do, and when I tried to ask if he was okay, he got in my face, and was quite aggressive with me. He randomly started to throw accusations at me, accusing me of all kinds of things that I have no idea where any of it came from. I was scared at that point and didn't want to be in the house with him. I hadn't seen him that angry before, and I think it was a build-up of grief that had come spilling out, but I felt scared. I put my shoes and coat on and told him I was going to head out for a while. That's when he snapped and accused me of trying to leave him. It all happened very suddenly, but he charged at me and got hold of my arm and threw me onto the floor and pulled me down the hallway. At some point of him drunkenly shouting about him not letting me leave him, he suddenly stopped and told me he was going to give me a reason to hate him so much. He stormed off into the front room, took the urn with our daughter in, and headed to the downstairs toilet. I got up and tried to stop him from doing whatever he was able to do. When he went towards the toilet, I was trying to stop him, and was pleading with him not to. He shoved me quite hard and I fell. He poured all of the ashes into the toilet, and threw her urn at me, hitting my leg. He then started yelling at me to get out before he killed me. I was shaking and felt like I was frozen, but I managed to get up and run to the front door. I took my keys and my handbag and drove off. I had no idea where to go, so parked up in a quiet area and just cried. I have done practically nothing but cry since. I have no family around, and no friends that I can turn to who are close by. I was sick earlier on, but I managed to keep some water down. I thankfully keep a supply of it in the car. I don't know what to do. I switched my phone off all night in case he tried to contact me. I didn't want to hear from him. He's tried to call me today, but I can't be around him while he is drinking again. I can't let him keep taking his anger out on me like this. I feel like it's all my fault. Everything. I just needed to vent. I'm exhausted of feeling like this. Comments. Comment 1. This one of those fucked up blessings in disguise of where it'd take child's death, complete desecration for OP, to finally get away from an abusive POS. That alcoholic as swipe thought that was good idea to do that to hurt make OP suffer more. It just never occurred him that he further permanently fucked up OP's soul to the point of never wanting to be with him again. I hope he stays in prison for at least 20 years. He needs to pay for what he did to OP, her daughter. Comment 2. What a terrible day to be somewhat fluent in the English language. That poor woman. I hope she'll be able to build a peaceful life. But to have your memories of a loved person be stained by this man's behavior. Horrible. And she's out of her. Update. I wanted to let you all know that I'm safe, and I didn't go back. I can't get into everything that has gone on with my husband, as the police have been involved, and some of it is ongoing. I can say that he was playing games and acted calm and collected with them, at first trying to make out that he hadn't done anything wrong, and that it was me with the problem. He told them that I was welcome home at any time. A couple of things happened, and after I received some very threatening voice messages and texts from him, he reported my phone as stolen, and had me cut off. He was trying to make me go home and have nowhere else to turn to. After some intervention, and run-ins with the police, he offered to leave the house for a couple of days a few weeks ago. I was to go there with some help, allowing me to get my belongings and our daughter's things. Nobody asked him to leave. He offered. I arrived there, along with some help, to find that he had destroyed all of my things. When I say all of my things, I mean everything that I owned, and that was in that house. I can't even imagine how long it must have taken him. He sliced my shoes and had gone over some of them in black marker. The same with my handbags. He cut up my clothes. All of my products were all over the bathroom, which he had smashed up. There were items of my clothes in the bath, and he had poured bleach all over them, as well as my cosmetics all destroyed and mixed in. He had smashed up broken my other belongings. He had trashed the house, including our daughter's room. The only things I couldn't find were some of her things he had taken with him. I don't really remember much of being in the house. I suppose I kind of went numb once I realized what he had done, and saw our daughter's room. The photos of it all are awful. He has claimed he doesn't remember doing any of it. He then put it down to a drunken rage. After doing it, he went straight over to his parents, knowing what was coming, and pleaded with them for help. They arranged for him to get some Keppert help. I mentioned in my post about his issues with alcohol. His drinking got out of control and to a point where he was trying to hide it, which made him even worse. I know he's been hurting, but it got to a point where it was almost impossible to have a reasonable conversation with him. After talking through things with various professionals, I realize now too that there was a lot of control going on, financial and emotional, and no matter how much he was hurting, I know it doesn't excuse his behavior. However much I have felt for him, and wanted him to get all of the help he needs, I can't see past what he did with our daughter's ashes. I felt like I lost her all over again. And I felt like I had somehow failed her again. His parents did reach out and promise they would get back the things of our daughters that he took. I haven't heard from them since. I'm sure it isn't easy for them. I've been getting some help, and I'm on a waiting list for some more therapy. I also start a new job on Tuesday. I am currently sitting here on the floor of my new place, typing this out. I picked up the keys yesterday. My tenancy officially begins on Monday. It isn't much to look at, and I'm starting all over again. But for the first time in weeks I feel like I can finally breathe a little. It's a bit overwhelming to have some space of my own again. But for the first time in what feels like a long time, I feel like I can almost relax. I have had a new bed donated to me, and it will arrive on Monday. And my key worker has applied for a cooker for me via a white goods scheme, with one of my utility providers. I don't have any hot water or heating until my gas is uncapped on Monday, but I do have some electricity. I've got some books to read, and just this morning I picked up a bag of mostly canned food from the food bank. It took a lot to be able to face going, but it's enough to last me for the next few days and it doesn't need to be heated. I might not have what I had, but I'm not where I was. I'm not sure where things will go from here. It felt like I had died along with my daughter, yet my body was still there and going through life. I want to believe I can do something in her memory. Even if that something is making it through each day. I'm safe. And I'm trying to be well. Now, for the next story. My husband almost killed our baby, and in an unbelievable twist, my toddler stepped in and saved his life. Hey Reddit. I need to share this story because I'm still shaking from what happened. I'm 25 female. Been with my husband 30 male since 2018. We have a 3-year-old girl and a newborn boy. But tonight, things almost took a tragic turn. My husband has always had trouble paying attention, but I never thought it would come to this. Our neighborhood is weirdly laid out, with cars zooming by at crazy speeds. I was folding clothes when I heard our toddler screaming, "Dad, help." That tone made me drop everything and sprint outside. What I saw made my blood run cold. Our newborn in his stroller, careening towards the busy street. I screamed and lunged, barely stopping the stroller in time. My baby girl's hands and knees were scratched up because she tripped trying to run after the stroller. I snatched up my baby, heart pounding, and scanned for my husband. He wasn't watching, he was chatting with neighbors, completely oblivious. The anger I felt was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I stormed up to him, shouting in disbelief. He looked shocked at first, then realized what almost happened. The apologies and tears came pouring out, but it was too late. I couldn't wrap my head around how he could be so careless, so blind to our toddler's screams and the stroller rolling away. I packed up the kids and left, staying with my parents. They're on my side, but my husband keeps texting, begging forgiveness, calling it an honest mistake. But I can't shake the terror of almost losing my baby because he couldn't focus for a single second. My baby girl got hurt in the process, because he couldn't pay attention. I almost lost my son because he couldn't pay attention. I can't stop crying. I feel so guilty. I wish this all never happened. Sorry it's short, I just want to hold my babies and I can't stop shaking every time I think about it. What if I was just 1 second late? Would I have been planning a funeral? Comments. Comment 1. Hi. I have had and a small child. I've spoken to neighbors' parents at the park. But I always keep an eye out on my kid. He is a runner, so I have to keep checking in, but in his stroller? I'm in an area full of packed people and trains as the main transportation. I have to be careful. Comment 2. As someone with ADHD, I fucking hate how every post where someone displays negligent or selfish behavior, there's always someone who goes, well, maybe they have AD, and can't help but have you considered that you should be more understanding. Update 1. The neighbor's wife sent me the footage. And I really can't just wrap my head around it. So my husband was walking with the stroller and my toddler was in front of them when they passed the neighbor's house. My neighbor was outside, washing his car, and my toddler saw his pet cat and stopped to go pet it, so my husband stopped. Left my baby on the road. He didn't even bother locking the wheels and walked all the way up the driveway, not even bothering looking back at the baby. He had his back face to him, for about 5 minutes before the stroller just suddenly started moving. I think it's because the road is on a hill kinda, or it could have been the wind. My toddler never went near the stroller. It couldn't been her. The stroller went down the road and my toddler. That's when she started screaming and running for it when she saw it. The neighbors started running after my daughter when she tripped. He tried to pick her up. That's when the neighbor's wife's car comes into frame, and she stops and starts running back to the way the stroller is coming after that. You can't really see anything, because it's all out of frame. But you can hear all the commotion. My husband just stood there the whole time, hand on his head with a blank stare on his face. He didn't even do anything when our toddler was crying from hurting herself. He only started crying when I confronted him. What do? I genuinely do not know what to do. I'm panicking. This was never the life I wanted for my kids. I don't understand why he wasn't standing there. I have not even gotten a text or a call from him since I got sent the video. It's just been silent. I just can't get the sound of my daughter's screams. That's the sound that no mother wants to hear. I can't explain in the moment, but it felt like my blood went cold. And I just felt pure fear. I never want to watch the footage again. Update 2. Hey everyone. I posted here a while back about my husband nearly killing our newborn son. I wanted to give a quick update on the situation. After reading through the comments, I decided to go back to my husband. Many of you pointed out that if I left him, we'd end up with 50/50 custody of our kids, which I couldn't bear. So, I made the difficult choice to stay, even though my love for him has faded. My plan now is to tough it out until our kids turn 18, and then leave. I'm terrified of getting pregnant again. Especially since I'm not allowed to use birth control, or get my tubes tied. My parents, who could offer support, are moving away, leaving me feeling trapped. Despite everything, my husband tries hard to make things right. He still treats me with affection and goes out of his way to create special moments for our family. Seeing him bond with our newborn and our daughter fills me with conflicting emotions. I know I can't stand being with him, but I can't bear to separate him from our kids either. He was so happy when we came back home, but I can't stand even looking at him. I feel some guilt because he still calls me by my nickname, looks at me like I'm the only girl in the world besides our daughter, and he still continues our traditions, like when the kids are sleeping he will go get ice cream and our favorite snacks and sets up a fort on our bed to watch movies on our laptop. Even though I'm sacrificing my happiness, my priority is ensuring my children's safety and well-being. It's a tough situation, but I'm doing my best to navigate it for the sake of my family. This is a throwaway, so I'm going to log out. Bye. Update 3. It makes so much sense because the way he was talking to the neighbor before everything happened, he was kind of leaning to the side. I talked to my neighbor, and I asked him if he knew that my husband was on drugs. He said he didn't, but he noticed that my husband looked a bit off recently. His wife works at a rehab clinic. After a fight where I had to flee with the kids to the neighbor house, she pointed out that the way he was acting was the way that people acted with drug withdrawal. My neighbor and his wife ended up helping me book a flight to my parents. I'm currently with them right now, and I have spoken to a lawyer that my parents are going to help me pay for, I think, all the people from my original post that told me to keep the footage, because it is going to come in handy. My husband keeps sending me videos of him shooting up and doing other substances. He keeps saying that they are going to fix him. He sent me a video of him standing in our kids' room, and he was just screaming at me, saying that it helped him cope with his ad. He took a knife and stabbed both of our kids' mattresses. I am not going back. He even cut up the side of my bed. There's a comment from my previous post that has been sitting in the back of my mind and has been bugging me. I think you know which one it was. It was by their comment saying I don't care if it was his ADHD, isn't going to fix anything, and will probably only make things worse. Talking and thinking about it like he intentionally tried to kill your child isn't either. With ADHD, you actually do not register things like this at all sometimes. Life expectancy for those of us with ADHD is actually significantly lower, because many of us end up, often accidentally, killing ourselves. It is not the same thing as carelessness, but learning about ADHD a little deeper can help you guys be safer. Understanding how my ADHD works and using different than standard precautions, like my brain needs, has actually most likely saved my life. Lie out what you want from him. That's probably that he get his ADHD better under control, whether that be through prescription medication or more homeopathic method. That you get a different place if possible. That he not take your kids out in your front yard without you, etc. Also, neither he or the neighbor noticed, but you heard your kid from inside. Something seems off here. Were your neighbors just watching the stroller roll towards the street? Was your husband on the other side of your house where he couldn't see the stroller? Were you already walking outside as this unfolded? I'm trying to understand better what was going on here and why your husband or the neighbor did not notice, but you did from inside. People via ADHD tend to be incredibly good and quick to AC emergency situations, so this is especially weird. I'm absolutely not accusing you of leaving anything out or anything, but asking you to think about what your husband and the neighbor were doing that neither noticed. That smells fishy. This is a horrible situation. I lost a pet due to the inattentiveness of a DHD, but I can't imagine even nearly losing a child. WTF, it baffles me that you can even compare losing an animal to losing a child. You made people with a DHD sound completely unreliable for themselves, and that they can't do anything. You made them sound very helpless, and saying that the life expectancy thing was completely uncalled for as well, I bet. Many people with a DHD reading that completely disagreed with you, judging from all the comments and YouTube videos I've seen on my post. I don't know if you're projecting that you lost a pet from your inattentiveness of ad. If you were letting things die in your care, you need to get stronger help, and no, I was not going to lay out what I want from him. He's the one that started mixing his meds and was high off his mind every time they went out for a walk. And no, I'm not ableist. I was in a very vulnerable state when I first posted my original post. All I was doing was looking for help and advice, but all I got was, where was you? What were you doing? Why wasn't you with the kids? Why didn't you get your husband checked out? I was healing from a fucking C-section. Get that through your heads. I genuinely hope that everybody that said something horrible about me in my original post has to get cut open, and then 4 days later is forced to run down the street. I gave him another chance like you all said in my original post. You've seen what happened. Stop using a DHD as excuse. I genuinely believe that if he had killed my child, you would have defended him, and no, I did not know he was on drugs. And all the people that reached out to me, I'm going to be forever grateful for. All of the parents with ad that didn't make me feel like it was all my fault, and all the stories that you guys have shared with me made me feel so seen, because I know exactly how it feels. I hope everybody is doing well. Everybody that was defending me, I wish I could give you a big hug. I genuinely wish I could send gift baskets. I would. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And I am so sorry about that comment that person made. I know you guys are all not like that. You guys are genuinely intelligent. From all the comments that I've read, I could not thank you guys enough. And one person that sent me that horrible message, I genuinely hope I run into you one day so I can beat your ass until you see stars and say anything about my daughter or my son one more time. And I will literally track you down.
Now, for the next story. I think my husband fathered his best friend's children, and now one of them is attracted to my daughter. OOP is married to Luke, who has a girl, Beth Amy, who he claims is like a sister to him. Even after getting married, Luke maintained a very close bond with Amy. OOP has 4 kids: Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy has 4 kids: Tom, 17, Kaylee, 14, and twins Adam and Jenna, 9. But no one knows who the dad is and has never been in any long-term relationships. All the kids have grown up together and are close. OP has begun to suspect that Luke has fathered at least one, if not all, of Amy's kids. Amy stopped having kids after Luke had a vasectomy. The kids also look like Tom. OOP has turned a blind eye for years. But no, Tom wants to date Sophie. OOP is worried they are actually half-siblings, and Tom and Amy also don't want it to happen. Comments. Comment 1. Oh, to be a fly on the wall when Luke finds out that the children he thought were his actually belong to someone else, and that his mistress has been cheating on him for years. It would be so satisfying. He will lose not only his wife and mistress but also some of his children. Not to mention losing the respect of the children he had with you. He's headed straight for the downfall. Comment 2. What DNA test did the kids use? That was super fast. Amy sounds like she has mental problems. No accountability for her actions. Zero remorse. No empathy. She thinks she can't do any wrong. Sue her for the laptop, press charges for battery or assault. Update 1. OOP doesn't try a sneaky DNA test, but confronts Luke and Amy, who deny anything untoward, and Amy refuses to have her kids' DNA tested. Luke's mother also suspects something. OP and Luke have a big fight, and he spends the night at Amy's. Update 2. OOP confides in Sophie about what she suspects about Tom's real father, and is surprised to find out that the kids already suspect this, and the relationship was actually a plan to get things out in the open and force the truth from Luke and Amy. OOP plans to move ahead with a divorce, and try to get a DNA test done as well. Update 3. I don't have any DNA test results back yet. That can take weeks. But now that I know Sophie is in no danger of dating a relative, the pressure is off. I'll get into this momentarily, but it frankly no longer matters if Luke fathered the children. I highly doubt my father-in-law is having an affair with Amy. At worst he might know, or even just suspect, the truth about Amy and Luke. But it's also possible that he just refuses to believe they would do such a thing. I've been vague about details for privacy, but to put it very simply, Jim and Amy are both pretty white. Kat and Luke are not. Had Jim fathered Amy's babies, they would look different than they do. Nevertheless, I do have an update. While a stream of comments have called me spineless and naive, called me a sister wife as an ex-Mormon, that hits a particular nerve, and most recently, a stream of comments have said my story's fake. Fair enough, it's the internet's, but Luke is not the first scumbag husband to have two families. Several other comments have been incredibly kind and supportive, and I really appreciate that. Apologies if I haven't responded to a comment or direct message that you sent. I covered as many as I could, but I was literally getting hundreds, so I definitely missed several of them. First things first, I discussed this in the comments, but our little team has supposedly recruited my mother-in-law. I say supposedly because Sophie and Tom were going to talk to her about getting help with submitting the DNA tests. And at the advice of my lawyer, I am staying out of the process. Officially, I told Sophie not to do it, and she said she wouldn't. Nelson contacted me about it either, though we have been in touch. I'll get into that more in a moment. The bottom line is that I can honestly say I had no knowledge of any DNA tests. Loophole City. Another bit of good news. I was digging through the paperwork in preparation for my divorce, wanting to get a head start against Luke, and one thing that came to my attention is that my name is on the paperwork for our home. Luke's name is not. I was the one who bought the house, and we always planned to add Luke onto the paperwork at some point, but we never got around to it, and eventually the idea was forgotten. It was my lawyer, Paige, who pointed this out to me, and it was like finding a winning lottery ticket on the ground. I don't know where I'd be without Paige. She's a dear friend from college who I reached out to, hand in hand, for help. She's been there for me this past week, not just as legal counsel, but as a friend I really needed right now. The thing is, she's not our lawyer, me and Luke. We have our own family attorney who has helped us out of jams in the past. We clashed with our hoe a few years ago, not worth getting into right now, but Paige is a lawyer who specializes in family law and has handled divorces before. Luke remembers her from college and knows she went into law, but doesn't know she's a divorce attorney. So I can have her over for coffee like we're catching up, and he has no idea anything is going on. Turns out, he's not the only one who can harbor someone under his spouse's nose under the guise of being a friend. So, onto the update. The last time I looked in Luke's phone was 3 months ago, around the point Sophie and Tom began to go around claiming they wanted to date. I found nothing. While I know how to search for recently deleted photos and didn't see any, my comments taught me how to find recently deleted messages. So when Luke was asleep, I did just that. Swiped his phone and brought it downstairs, checked recently deleted. I am glad I did, but I also wish I had not, because I'm still reeling from the pain. Sure enough, a conversation with Amy had been deleted. Recent text talking about the conflict between her and me, with Amy describing me as a problem and Luke trying to pacify her, without defending me at all, to be clear. They both alluded to how they had expected this for a while, and just hoped it would never happen. Presumably me accusing them of having an affair. While the whole conversation and the fact that it was deleted was sketchy, nothing was actually admitted. So I scrolled a bit higher, to a few days before the fight. Amy's messages got a bit more flirty. Then, I saw it. 5 days before I confronted them, Amy had sent Luke a topless pic. A selfie with no shirt or bra. Guys, I teared up and knew it was true. I knew it in my bones, but seeing the proof still cut me like a hot knife. Doesn't help that Amy's always had bigger breasts than me. I exited the Messages app and checked Luke's recent frothy deleted photos. Sure enough, the same selfie was there, and others. Amy topless, Amy naked, in various poses to show off. There were pictures of the two of them together, cuddled and pressed close like a couple. In some of these she was naked. In some they both were. There were videos. Amy sent Luke a video message of herself topless, and I had to actually hear her voice talking to him in a tone that made me sick, about how she was sending him a quick video to help him get it through the day. In more than one video she called him her boo, and hearing her call him that, I almost vomited. Stopped looking at that point, I'd seen enough. For about 5 minutes anyway, then a strange compulsion to keep searching led me to check Luke's laptop. I knew enough of his passcodes to access his iCloud storage, and yeah, basically more of the same. There were letters, long letters between them. I didn't have the heart to read past the first few lines of one of them, But I did read Luke mention our children. There were countless naked topless selfies of Amy. Selfies of them together. Videos where Amy appeared to be masturbating. There were sex tapes. Of the two of them. Tom had previously offered to try and hide a camera in Amy's room. But fuck, he never needed to. Luke was hiding a whole treasure trove under my nose all along. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. There were so many. Going back years. Not all of it was even sexual. There were some photos of Amy's kids too. One video was of Kaylee and the twins playing together when they were younger, and Luke and Amy's voices from behind the camera. There were even old pictures of Luke and Amy from when they were younger. I'd even say teenagers. I snapped. All these years I had been telling myself I had to be wrong, that it couldn't be true. Well, it was true. I know that no one forced me to look at as much of the evidence as I did, but I'm still hurting very badly from having seen it, and in that moment, I wanted to act, so I did. I called my lawyer, who is a remarkable woman. It was the middle of the night, so I had to call her twice and she picked up. Though I had woken her, when I asked her to come by and said it was an emergency, she agreed. I also asked her to draw up the paperwork and have it ready. She told me that she'd already had it ready since I first reached out to her. As I waited for her, I went through the necessary channels on Luke's laptop to make sure he wouldn't be able to remotely disconnect our access to his little stash. Changing passwords and all that. My lawyer, let's call her Paige, arrived, and I went outside to greet her in the car. Spent a good half hour in the passenger seat just crying. And she was great about that. Before I passed her Luke's phone and his laptop, with all the information she needed to use them. She warned me that this could be considered theft. So I asked her to forward and print out copies of everything she could, and then bring the items back. Because I just couldn't bear to do it myself. She agreed. I went back inside, and then I packed up Luke's things while the house slept. At one point Owen got up to use the bathroom and asked me what I was doing, but I told him I was just cleaning. Luke stirred once or twice while I was in the bedroom, but did not wake. I got all of his things packed into trash bags, and I loaded up the car. That's when I woke him up, and told him to come outside. He was confused and half asleep, but he did notice things were missing. I ignored his questions and just told him to come with me. So he followed me outside. Once we were by the car, I pulled out the divorce papers and officially handed them to him. That was about when he figured out what I was doing, and he tried to talk me out of it. Tried to be sweet with me, to be tender. He kept insisting that he loved me and that there had never been anything with Amy. Kept trying to persuade me not to tear our family apart. Even 2 weeks ago, I might have wilted under him because the manipulation and gaslighting were truly masterclass. But I can see through it now. I didn't tell him that I knew he was full of shit. I didn't tell him what I had seen. I just told him we were finished. He tried a different approach. He refused to go, stated firmly that our children were his too, and that even if we were separating, I had no right to just decide the kids would stay with me over it. This was where I very coldly presented the paperwork, reminding him that the house is in my name, and told him under no circumstances would my kids be staying with Amy. He argued a while longer, but in the end he decided to be the bigger person and keep the peace. At that moment I didn't care where he went. Before he left he did ask about his phone and laptop, and I waved him off by saying they were in one of the bags. Bought a little time. I couldn't sleep for the rest of that night. I cried more. Eventually I realized I'd have to wake my children up early, and explain to the extent that I could. Naturally I woke Sophie first. I told her that I had kicked her father out, and that I had discovered evidence of an affair on his devices. I did not specify what kind of evidence, and she did not ask. I woke up the others and gently told them that their dad had gone to stay somewhere else for a while. That I wasn't sure where, but from now on things were going to be different. Louise was the one to ask if we were getting divorced, and I couldn't lie to her. I told her yes. Owen asked when they could see their father again, and I wanted to cry. Sophie was a very big help, urging her siblings to be sympathetic to me right now and worry about Dad later. I knew better than to poison them against their father. Paige warned me against doing that as well, so I only told Sophie that the affair was confirmed since she had already been in the know. However, as the kids were getting ready for school, Owen approached me and asked me point blank if it was about Amy. If Luke was going to be with her instead of me. I couldn't answer, but I suppose that's an answer on its own. He got the kids to school, and my next step was calling to have the locks changed. I knew Luke would be back for his devices before long. But thankfully Paige returned with them before he showed up again. It was a very quick visit. She just told me that all was accomplished, and she had records of everything we would need in court. Sure enough, Luke turned up an hour later demanding to know where his laptop and phone were. I had set them back in our bedroom like they had never moved, and I just told him he had forgotten them. He insisted that I had said they were in one of the bags, so I just shrugged him off and told him I must have been mistaken. After he grabbed them, he tried again to reason with me, but I just showed him the door. I knew the kids would start to come home from school before long, and I think he was trying to delay leaving so he could see them. I was not having it. I started shouting again and sent him on his way. I'm still just in absolute pain and despair for what I saw. I don't know if he'll realize that anyone went through his devices and made copies of the evidence, or if he suspects I saw anything, but he obviously didn't say so. After he left, I cried once again. Talked to my mother-in-law that night. Apparently Luke did show up to his parents' house, which was a surprise, as I was so certain he'd stay with Amy. But maybe even he knows how suspicious that would look to the children, and doesn't want to rock the boat as much. Maybe he knows I'm more likely to let my children see their grandmother than Amy at this point, and he wants to see them to give his version of events. That is not happening. Kat already shared his version with me, that he relayed to her and Jim, that I'm having some kind of mental breakdown, that he wishes he could help me. But my paranoia is causing me to lash out and turn violent. I was never violent. I shoved him away when he tried to hold me, that is all. And what's so hilarious is that he didn't mention Amy at all to his parents. He didn't even frame it as me falsely believing he was having an affair. Even though that's his story when talking to Amy, he left Amy out of it when talking to his parents. Kat noticed that. She believes me. Jim doesn't know what to believe anymore. According to Kat, he seemed very, very troubled by what he heard from all sides. As for Amy, she's radio silent. Tom has told Sophie that she's acting like nothing is wrong, but is clearly stressed out. That when her children ask, she makes the same sort of claims. That I am having some kind of emotional, nervous breakdown, and pushing her away, as well as Luke. She doesn't mention anything about my accusing them of an affair, but still puts it all on me. Amy has not reached out to talk to me directly, and I have not tried talking to her since our big argument. I haven't really told my kids anything, just that I'm having disagreements with Luke and Amy, though I was very clear that it is not a question of my mental health. Honestly, I think they all kind of know what's going on. Sophie continues to be my rock, as I try to be for her and the others, and Tom continues to be our spy in the ranks. Right now, my biggest regret is the stress that all of this is causing on the children, which I knew it would, but it still needed to be done. My life has fallen apart, but it was never my life. Update 4. As far as the deed being in my name, it's not an absolute hook, line, and sinker. But Paige is convinced that between that and my having been the one paying the mortgage, I stand a very good chance. It could be interpreted as a common marital property. But I'm going for primary custody with supervised visits anyway. I'm playing hardball. People also question whether I should still be posting these, but so long as it's all anonymous, I am in the clear. Doesn't even matter if someone who knows me could figure out I posted this. I didn't use any real names, or reveal my location, or anything like that. As for the lapped, even Paige admitted that was questionable. But technically I gave permission, and she was only doing what I could have easily done on my own. I just really didn't want to go through all of that content. As far as the divorce papers, Paige had them filled out after the very first time I contacted her. My serving them to Luke was ceremonial. She still contacted him later to officially serve him and request his lawyer's details. But before he could respond, I had already done something a little sneaky. I reached out to our family attorney, the one who has always been on call to represent me and Luke during our marriage. He helped us out of a jam with the HOA. A while, I'll call him Zach. Now, contrary to some of the comment suggestions, I cannot just go around town consulting with every lawyer in the area, with the explicit purpose of locking my husband out of hiring them. That is bad faith and judges don't look too kindly on it. However, this was Zach. He had been my attorney, and Luke's for years. I feel like I had just as much right to him as Luke did. And I got there first. So I was able to nail down our family's lawyer. Met with both him and Paige, and boy howdy, do they not like each other. Zach brought up some of the same problems as some of my comments. He argued that Paige's activity was in the gray area, and urged me to hire him to represent me in the divorce instead. That caused a bit of conflict, as Paige is explicitly a family attorney, and this is her specialization. So I'm going to be consulting both of them from here on out. Zach actually thinks it's a good thing that I made these posts, as they can't really do much other than prove my sanity when Luke and Amy try to argue otherwise. Overall, I am doing better. I've been talking to a friend in real life, the mom of one of Sophie's friends. I also have therapy scheduled for myself, and I intend to look into family therapy as well. When my kids ask me what's going on, I simply tell them that their father and I are having adult problems, and it's nothing they need to worry about. That worked for about a day. Sophie warned me they were planning to confront me as a group, and they did. asking if Dad had cheated on me with Amy. Obviously they've been talking about this, and perhaps they have been for longer than I had anticipated. Perhaps they'd been wondering. Again, even though I had absolute proof, I was hesitant to tell them as much, and let me explain why. I naturally wouldn't tell them about the pornographic content I found. I would simply say that I found messages between Luke and Amy revealing their affair. But with the exception of Sophie, they wouldn't be satisfied with that. I already know Carter, curious little sweetheart that he is, would want to see these messages. So instead, when I was asked directly by my kids if their dad had cheated on me, I simply said I believe he did, yes. With as much sincerity as I could muster. I think they believe me. Tom and Sophie are texting nonstop, and from what I can gather, there's doubt among Amy's children as well, that this is about me losing my mind and not about their mother being too close to my husband. I think it's slowly sinking in for poor Jim that what he didn't want to believe was possible is very much possible, and it's happening. I haven't shown him or Kat any letters or anything. They're hosting Luke, so I haven't had much of any contact with them at all. But I did have one phone call with Kat where we wished each other well. That was nice. In the background I could hear shouting, and though Kat quickly went outside, I did hear what sounded like Jim shouting at Luke. He doesn't usually shout. He's the calmest man I've ever met, so in a way I'm worried about him, but also relieved that the wool is being pulled off of his eyes. According to Kat, Luke is still staunchly denying everything. He was pretty upset when he found out that I had poached Zach, though, which gave me a kind of grim satisfaction. The test results came back. Sophie and Tom tested their DNA against each other to see if they truly are blood siblings. Here's a surprise. According to the test, they're not. They don't share any DNA. To everyone who believed Jim had fathered Amy's babies, here is definitive proof that he did not, because the test would have revealed that too. But I never believed it anyway. Sophie has her doubts and wonders if the results weren't faulty and if we shouldn't take another test to be absolutely certain, but I'm not really worried about that. More confused than anything. I was so certain Tom had to be Luke's son. He was too. Now he doesn't know what to think, and I don't either. I obviously now know the affair happened and lasted years, and I know from the letters that Kaylee is Luke's child. Or at least both he and Amy seem to believe she is, which confirms they were intimate 15 years ago. Now I'm just wondering for Tom's sake. Who, if not Luke, is his father? He does kind of look like Luke, but that might just be coincidence. In general, everything was quiet for a few days, until it wasn't. Until she finally showed her face. My best friend Amy. I am so happy I installed Ring cameras everywhere, as you are about to understand. Sure enough, Amy turned up on my doorstep and asked to talk. She had a relaxed demeanor, and did not raise her voice. Assuming she was approaching me on Luke's behalf, I told her that I wasn't interested in talking to her, and to just go away. She did not leave, but she didn't make a scene either. She persisted in telling me we needed to have a conversation. The kids weren't home, and did have cameras inside. I was also recording her on my phone and being discreet about it. So eventually I relented and let her in. I don't know if she realized she was on camera. We sat down on the couch, and she instantly got into the reason for her visit. Turns out she and Luke know, or suspect, that I procured damning material from his laptop. Amy accused me of going through his devices, and told me that anything I found was not my business, and I needed to delete it. That was all she had to say. No apology, no admission of guilt, didn't take responsibility for her own behavior. Hell, she might have known I was recording her, because she didn't even directly acknowledge what the sensitive material on Luke's laptop actually was. So I confronted her, letting out some of my anger. I asked how she could have the nerve to make demands of me. I asked her why she and Luke would do a thing like this in the first place. Why had they seen fit to spend all these years betraying me? I posed the question that I'd been wondering about for a long time, and as I expected, I got no answer. Literally, Amy didn't seem to really hear me even as I confronted her. She seemed like she was stressed, panicked, even. But she was keeping it under wraps. She ignored my questions and accusations, and just kept telling me to delete whatever content from Luke's laptop that I had. She said that if I wanted to divorce Luke, that was my call, but not to drag her into it. Oh, that made me so mad. I kept my temper, but I did snap back that she was already very much in it. Amy just kept repeating herself, telling me to delete whatever I found. So I just refused. I asked her point blank why I should. Why did I have any reason to? Amy got more aggressive, raising her voice. She was trying to intimidate me, but I held my ground. She told me that this wasn't about me, and that I needed to just do as she said, that it was very important. So I asked again, why? And yet again she would not answer. So I asked her if Luke had sent her to do this, or if she had shown up on her own. No answer to that either. It was like talking to a brick wall. So I asked her to leave. Just as I'd been afraid of, she wouldn't go. She refused to leave until I had deleted everything I'd found in front of her. I couldn't help laughing. I told her no, that wasn't going to happen. This is where I could see her starting to freak out more. In another moment she got up, ran into the other room, and grabbed my laptop. Before I could stop her, she smashed it on the floor. I really don't know why she thought that would work or get her the outcome she wanted. I think she was just panicking. Obviously I still have everything, except now I need to buy a new laptop. And, sadly, her doing this was out of frame of the camera. But it's fine. All of my important files are backed up, and at that moment I was more concerned that Amy would do something else drastic. She looked like she was going to have a breakdown. I tried again, very calmly, to tell her that she needed to leave, or I would call the police. She refused again, and just kept repeating her demand that I drop this whole cheating angle and divorce Luke without trying to argue that an affair took place. At that point I just stared at her. At the woman I had considered one of my dearest friends in all the world. And I told her that I didn't owe her anything, but she owed her children the truth. That they had the right to know where they came from. Who Luke really was to them. Amy bristled and told me it was none of my business. That I didn't understand her family and I needed to back off. She kept going back to this idea that I could divorce Luke, but I must not claim he'd had an affair with her. I just told her that I didn't need her permission to handle my divorce how I wanted, and told her again to leave. She got more and more desperate, and her anger accelerated to the point that she physically attacked me. I did not expect her to actually do this. I'm not much of a fighter, but I do know the human body pretty well, and where it's weakest. She hurt me pretty badly, but I got her off me. That part was very much on camera, and the whole audio was recorded on my phone. She finally left after that, and I immediately called to file a police report. I had the strangest feeling she'd try something similar and wanted to beat her to the punch. I was able to clean myself up by the time I had to face my kids, and while I downplayed the story, I did not lie to them about why I had a black eye. I told them, for their own safety, to steer clear of Amy. I also sent the footage to Paige and Zach, as well as pictures of my injured state before I cleaned up. They've also printed out the letters that reference Kaylee as Luke's child. I really feel like Amy just screwed herself over on all this. I don't know what her motives were. Was she protecting Luke? Was this his idea? Does she just really not want the world to know she's a homewrecker? Is she covering her own ass? As if people didn't know already. The more of my social circle I talk to, and inform of the basics, the more people are confessing that they had wondered in the past if Luke wasn't cheating on me, but didn't have any concrete proof. I suppose Amy doesn't want her kids to know who fathered them, which does line up, but I'm still not sure about Tom. I didn't ask Amy about him in particular. I don't know why you guys are so eager for these updates, but I don't mind posting them. I've never blogged about my life before. I'd imagine it feels something like this. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for pouring wine on my husband's ex-girlfriend? A few days ago, I told my mother-in-law that I'd bring her grandkids, our gorgeous twins, 5 years old, to her house for dinner. It was a gesture of good faith, as she and Phil had babysat for an entire weekend while hubby and I took some time to ourselves. Mel decided to make that dinner a grand occasion and invited the entire family over. Fine with me, the more the merrier. Except half an hour after we arrive, Jo walks in. The entirety of her back out, titties popping and all. Now, Jo is my husband's ex-girlfriend, who also happens to be a favorite of a long-time friend of hubby's family. I don't know why they didn't work out. Frankly, I don't care. Long story short, Jo does what she always does at these functions. Touch my husband inappropriately. Whisper in his ear. Try to eat off his plate, etc. She went as far as to try and steal my seat next to him at the dinner table. Luckily my Sil, a literal saint, was able to stop her. Hubby is generally okay with putting his foot down. If she does anything truly egregious, he does put a stop to it. But to him, her touchy behavior and the way she tends to hover around him and try to get his attention don't fall in that category. I told myself to ignore her and not let her get to me, but she pulled me aside later that evening and said absolutely horrible things to me, telling me that it was only a matter of time before my husband left me, and that he was using me as a breeding plant, etc. In fact, I am currently pregnant again, and at that point, I had had enough. So I dumped my drink on her and walked away. Jo absolutely lost it and walked out the house. Hubby's extended family generally has a good opinion of me, so no one thinks I did it on purpose. I did, and I'd do it again, but my husband knows better. He pulled me to the side to confront me about it, and was surprisingly angry. Did I make a bit of a scene? Sure, but his anger wasn't proportional to that at all. If you can't tell, hubby is the type of person that doesn't like to make a scene, especially around his family. I have complained about his proximity to Jo multiple times before all this went down. I've asked him to cut contact with her, and basically just ignore her presence. And he's refused on the basis that she's a family friend. Basically, he thought I was overreacting every time I'd bring her up. But I'm tired of being the bigger person. Why should I have to watch her throw herself at him and rise above? No. That wench got what was coming to her, and my actions were long overdue. We argued back and forth about it for a while, before I eventually revealed what she had said to me at the dinner. He understood my anger at that point, but I don't think it should have even gotten that far for him to understand why I don't want her around. The fact that he'd trust the character of an ex over his wife of 10 years and the mother of his children is baffling and incredibly hurtful. I explained this to him, and he adamantly disagrees and gives excuses. So now we're here. Hubby thinks I should have brought up what she said from the beginning. To me, this issue isn't what she said in and of itself, but her behavior as a whole. As a disclaimer, I know my husband is not cheating on me with this woman. We spend every waking second either together, or with the kids. He wouldn't have time to. I trust him completely as well. It just bothers me how comfortable and desperate that woman is. Mill loves her and Jo can do no wrong in her eyes. So I suppose that's where she gets the confidence from. That aside, I don't understand why he allows her to come near him in the first place. Ita. Edit no. I was not drinking while pregnant. I have not told my husband's family that I am pregnant, as we haven't passed the first trimester yet. Hubby had gotten me juice in a wine glass, but because no one knew, the narrative became that I threw wine. Edit 2. Gotten a couple people asking how taking the kids to dinner is a reward for Mello. She had been asking us to come around for dinner for a while, and is always asking for an excuse to see our kids. We don't live very close by anymore, so in-person visits are rare nowadays. She also really enjoys cooking for everyone, and would do weekly dinners when hubby and I still lived in her area. My husband's family is Italian, if that gives any idea. Comments. Hatsue. Comment 1. I think some copying and pasting errors happen with the comments in update 1. Those are from a dress-related issue. Comment 2. God, it's so hard to distance yourself from toxic situations like this, when hubby doesn't have your back. Even a divorce wouldn't be enough because OOP's now tied permanently via their children. I don't see how this can work unless hubby gets his head out his ass and covers for his wife. But he's still suckling at his mama's teat, and that'll never change. Update 1. The Dailary. I wanted to post this in relationship, but it got deleted, so I'm back here. This really is not an Ida post. I'm desperate for advice, ways to fix this once and for all, if you have any. There is a bit of backstory to this situation. A lot of it is covered in a previous post of mine to this sub. Although I think that post is quite funny as I read it back. I'll sum it up if you don't feel like going back to read. For context, both hubby and I have been married for about a decade. I am currently pregnant with our third kid, my last pregnancy yielding 2 gorgeous girls that I absolutely adore. Now the brief summary. A month and change ago, hubby and I took the kids to his mom's house for a family dinner. This happens every so often, and every single time, hubby's ex Jo is invited by Mill. And every single time, without fail, she crosses boundaries with my husband that I'm sure would ring code red alarm bells in any other person's head. Hubby does not fully entertain her advances, but he doesn't suppress them fully either. At least not in the way I think he should. In private, Jo is extremely catty towards me. It's as if her entire vibe is copy and pasted from Mean Girls. But her and Nal get along great, and the rest of the family likes her as well. I've been dealing with this on the chin for some time, but at that last gathering I snapped and accidentally tipped my wine glass over her. Inappropriate dress after she said incredibly cruel things to me. Hubby got mad at me for making a scene in front of his family, and we left shortly after. Summary over. I ended up showing hubby the comments and PMs I got from my post a couple days after, which were largely against him. I didn't anticipate it swaying his opinion much, and it didn't. In fact, it made the situation worse. He didn't like the overwhelming majority of comments claiming that he liked the attention, and thought I embellished details about Joanna's behavior in the post. I did not. And in many cases, I downplayed just how crazy some of her actions are. I asked him if his mom even liked me, and he didn't even respond to the question. He looked at me and we sat in silence for a full fucking minute. Many people under my previous post said I was crazy if I thought Dhamil would invite hubby's ex to dinner with his wife and kids there, as a show of respect and goodwill. Call me crazy, but I bought into the whole she's a family friend crap, and continually let it slide. I cried non-stop for days after our conversation. Maybe I'm an idiot and I should have seen the signs, but I genuinely thought me and my Millil had a decent relationship, especially now that I have the twins. There was some stuff that happened early on in hubby and I's relationship that caused some discord, but I thought we had moved past it all. Clearly not. I think it's much more likely that she likes her grandkids and just tolerates the vesicle that produced them. Hubby and I stood at somewhat of an impasse for a week after. I'm very loving by nature, but I've just about had it with this situation. So I was irritable. Quiet, just a complete 180 from my usual self. We talked again and he said he'd try to be more assertive with Joe. I told him there'd be no need, since I had no plans on going to his mother's house anymore. Me not going means the twins can't either, since he can't very well be expected to entertain his family and look after the children he helped create. Note the sarcasm. Though that does work in my favor, since Milla loves the twins and he apparently cannot stand to disappoint her. The impasse continued. I've had a few complications with my pregnancy since then. Baby and I are okay, nothing too worrisome. And there's been so many other things happening in our lives that the frigid air between us has slowly started to melt. We have not resolved the situation at all, just glossed over it in favor of more pressing matters. I really do need him right now. And I'm not necessarily mad that things are starting to go back to normal. I just know that it's going to become a thing the next time his mom throws an event. I will convince myself that this time around will be fine. And it won't. Because it is never fine. But I'm unsure how to bring up the issue again without seeming like I'm dragging up the past. It truly does drive me crazy. Even more so now that I realize Mel's kindness isn't fully genuine. Is there any advice on bringing this up carefully? On resolving this issue once and for all? I'm at my wit's end because I adore this man in every other aspect. But I can't keep putting up with this. Update 2. 2 years into our relationship, I still hadn't met his parents. He hadn't met mine because my family is a disaster. An entirely different story. But from what I could tell, his parents seemed fine. When I asked why I hadn't met them, he joked that his mom didn't like me because of his ex. I can't recall his specific words, but that was the general idea. Anyway, I treated it like a joke because he did. As time progressed, it felt less and less like a joke and more like the startling truth. I finally got to meet Mill and Phil a few more months down the line, and the welcome. Underwhelming to say the least. But I figured it was just me having weird expectations. His family's Italian, so I'd done a little, crappy, research on what to expect, in addition to asking him about his family. I thought they'd be a little warmer, but they were not downright rude to me, so it was still a win in my book. As time passes, I tried to warm up to Mill, but nothing worked. Her indifference slowly turned into thinly veiled disdain. For one of Phil's birthdays, I got him a handmade, expensive as fuck. I still think about that goddamn wallet. It enrages me. Italian leather wallet with Diaz. Boyfriend at the time, approval. Turns out Italians have a superstition against gifting empty wallets, which made the gift a bit awkward. But Phil didn't make a big deal and even gave me a coin to turn it into a purchase, instead of a gift. We laughed. And I thought things were fine until I found the wallet tucked away in my DH apartment a month later. I find out from him that Mill apparently said she got Phil a better one, so mine wasn't needed anymore. When that happened and why no one bothered to tell me, I don't know. Oh, and Phil fell ill shortly afterwards, which I'm pretty sure she blamed on me too. Mill speaks fluent English, but for the first couple months of knowing her, I was led to believe she only spoke Italian. Because that's all she would speak around me. Granted, I could have asked DH about her level of English, but it didn't occur to me. I assumed one would speak English around company that didn't speak their native language, if they had the ability to. Imagine my shock hearing him speak fluent English for the first time, not to me. Can't remember the context, but still, what the fuck? And don't get me started on wedding planning. An absolute nightmare. Mel nitpicked everything. We had a smaller budget, largely due to me, and she made sure I felt lesser for it. She had mentioned wanting to be involved and she and Phil were footing most of the costs, so I said yes. My bridesmaids helped deal with her. But eventually I cut her out of the planning entirely because having her around was starting to suck the life out of me. She also made a big deal about my parents not attending or paying for a portion of the wedding. My family and I were completely estranged at the time, and she didn't quite seem to like that either. She'd rant in Italian, and while I didn't understand much, I knew she was shit-talking me. Oh, and she's a classic mama's boy enabler. They infantilized DH growing up, and there was a time where we couldn't buy groceries without her input. He's her golden boy. I've heard her refer to him as her miracle child. She has not had difficulty conceiving that I know of, but he is the only boy she gave birth to. When friction would rise between Mel and I, he'd try to keep the peace but still took her side in many situations. He only stood firm when she insulted my upbringing, or tried to make me feel unworthy of marrying DH. Both things I appreciated immensely, because those are sore subjects, but I wish he'd done more at times. He isn't blameless in this either, but this post isn't really about him. Suffice to say, I have many a story of how shitty and cold Mel would be towards me. But then I got pregnant, and her attitude did a complete 180. Suddenly she was offering to babysit, cook meals, knit clothes, etc. She even kissed me on both cheeks when she came to see us after labor. This woman had never voluntarily touched me before this point, I don't think. We started cooking together, and she taught me family recipes and some niche Italian phrases commonly used in the village their family is from. Dare I say we bonded. I thought we'd finally gotten past whatever the initial problem was. Maybe having kids with her son was enough to prove that I was here to stay, so she decided to warm up to me. I don't know. I had no close maternal figures in my life NC with my narcissistic mom. Since college, and hardly any contact with my grandmothers, so this felt incredibly cathartic. I wasn't racing to tell her my secrets or confide in her, but toying with the idea that we might be able to build up to that point made me happy. I had postpartum depression after the twins, and having her around to help was a godsend. I was hesitant at first, but she proved herself to be beyond trustworthy, and my husband and I were absolutely exhausted. I love my gorgeous girls, but 2 kids at once made me the bitchiest I've ever been. My stress levels were through the roof between feeding, nursing, changing, burping, soothing, etc. My husband was equally exhausted, and just when we would feel hopeless, Mel would offer to come over. Let us sleep, eat, go out, just do whatever we needed to recharge. We would talk, usually about the kids, but I just felt excited that she wanted to hold conversation with me. In the past she hadn't bothered. If she called, it was her son's phone, and they'd speak, and then she'd hang up. But suddenly she was asking to speak to me as well. There was something extremely validating about it all, and I was happy to put the past to bed in favor for this new change. But recently, through a situation that is related but not the focus of this post, I realized she never respected me, or my relationship with her son. For the past decade, Mill has been inviting my husband's ex to family gatherings, and turning a blind eye to her blatant advances on him. She was introduced as a family friend, so I thought nothing of it initially. Plus, as Mel's and I's relationship improved, I assumed any malice she showed toward me would naturally fade. She had been inviting husband's ex to family events prior to me giving birth, and continued to do so well after. I don't know why, but I made the dumb assumption that because it continued, it couldn't have been in bad taste. We had gotten past our bad blood, after all, so if she was still inviting DHX, it couldn't have been with bad intent. Or so went my idiotic logic. But after posting about my situation, I realized that I was so horribly naive about everything. Then, a few weeks ago, I came across a post of a man disparaging his mom for treating her dill like shit, and then switching up when she gave birth to her grandchildren. And then it clicked. That is exactly what happened to me. Mel's kindness truly may never have been genuine towards me. Rather, her love for her grandchildren outweighed any disdain she held towards me. She wasn't warming up to me at all. She was tolerating my presence to have access to my kids. Reddit really is an eye-opening place. Needless to say, I feel absolutely crushed. Everything else aside, I truly thought my Mill was in my corner. The past 5 years felt so healing because of our relationship. I've never had a sustained, genuine relationship with an older woman before this. And finding out it was all fake is numbing in ways I can't explain. I feel so fucking stupid. Which is saying quite a bit considering I didn't think feeling like more of an idiot was possible for me right now. I just wonder how starved for attention I must be to have missed such clear signs. Grieving a relationship that only existed on my end is fucking hard. And coming to terms with my own lack of awareness and disillusionment has been a battle, among several others, that I just feel like I'm fucking losing. I feel a bit pathetic, all things considered. Because how did I not realize? And now all these thoughts flood my mind of what she's been telling my children when she's with them, whether or not extended family is in on it as well. I've been a mess. God, I feel sick. There's certainly many layers to this situation, but this one hurts much more than I thought it would. I'm going to stop here because I've already written ample, but I am more than going through it. Now, for the next story. I found out my husband has been telling his coworkers that I'm his sister. What do I do? My husband, I'll call him Josh, and I've been together for 6 years, married for 4, and we don't have kids. We have a really healthy and communicative relationship. We're both pretty easygoing and I really love him. He started working at a large accounting firm about 3 years ago, and from what he tells me, he loves it there. He's made a lot of friends through his job, and he goes out with them for drinks and social events quite often. And I've been totally okay with that. I'm quite introverted, so I've never been interested in meeting his colleagues or work friends, nor have I asked to. I've got my own circle of friends and I'm fine with us having separate friend groups. After what happened yesterday, it only just occurred to me that he has never actually asked me if I'd like to meet any of them. Or go to one of his work events. I guess that's important context. Anyway, I'll start with what happened a few months ago, that I had brushed off until now. I was at a bar with some friends for a couple of Friday after work drinks, and a guy approached me. He was there with some friends, too. He looked slightly familiar, but I hadn't met him before. He seemed friendly enough, and he asked me, "My name, right?" I think I must have just given him a confused look, because he followed up with, "I'm Jake. I work with Josh." I realized that I recognized him from some photos on my husband's phone. I don't use social media except for a private Instagram, so I'm not sure if he posted the photos anywhere, but we've got a very trusting relationship, so I look in his photos sometimes. Don't hate me. This is where it gets a bit embarrassing. I'm a bit socially awkward, and so I struggle to end the conversation. But he just kept talking at me. I guess he was already a couple of beers deep. But while he was talking, he said something like, "It's great that you guys are still so close. I haven't talked to my brother in ages." At the time I was like, huh? But I just assumed he was drunk and not making sense, so I ignored it. He started to get a little flirty, so I turned to my friends and we left shortly after that. I didn't say anything to them about it, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I also decided not to tell my husband that I had met his coworker Jake. Not to hide it, but because I figured the guy would remember talking to me. And I didn't want to make it awkward for Josh at work by telling him his colleague tried to hit on me. I just thought no harm, no foul. But yesterday morning, I was out walking our dog Monty. He's a cross between a few breeds and has very unique markings. This matters, I promise. And was on my way to my regular cafe, which is in town. I was waiting in line to order, and the guy in front was an older man. He got his coffee and turned around, but stopped and looked at my dog and goes, "Hello, Monty." Monty was super excited to see him, apparently, and so I guessed that the guy was another colleague of Josh's, because Josh brings the dog to the office a couple of times a week. I thought it was sweet, to be honest, so I smiled at him and said hi. He introduced himself, I guessed correctly that he was a colleague, but then he said something like, "Aren't you so good, sister, walking as Sooty?" I was so confused that I didn't even know how to react at first, so I stumbled on my words and just said, "It's my dog." I regret it, but I genuinely couldn't bring myself to correct him and say that I'm Josh's wife and not his sister. It was just too awkward, and I just wanted to leave because I think was suddenly dawning on me what might have been going on. He asked me something about sharing a dog, but I was able to escape the conversation by being next in line to order my coffee, and he left. I seriously don't know what to do, because what the fuck? Do I even ask my husband about this? Part of me is just assuming, or hoping that it's a mistake, that he doesn't talk about me much at work, and they assume we are related, because we both have brown hair. But the thought that he has been telling his coworkers that I'm his sister, and evidently they have seen what I look like, so they must have seen photos, makes my stomach churn. I don't even know how I would broach the subject with him. I need some help. What would you guys do in this situation? I have only told one friend what happened, because it's so weird and embarrassing, and she has jumped straight to time to plot his downfall, because she's my ride or die lover, but I don't want to immediately assume the worst or ruin my marriage over something that could be nothing. I'm sorry for the long and rumbly post, but I would really appreciate any and all advice. Edit. I die. Holy fuck, thank you everyone who commented with some advice. I haven't read all of them, but I really appreciate the suggestions from you guys. A small update: Josh came home at about 2:30 a.m. last night. But he was drunk, so he just went straight to sleep. Which is fine by me, because fuck having this conversation in that state. I've just woken up but he's still sleeping. First thing I just want to clear up. I've seen a lot of people suggesting I have crippling social anxiety. Or I'm severely introverted, which I suppose you could glean from the way I explained what happened, but I'm not. I meant that I'm slightly introverted and that I'm not the most eager to meet lots of new people at once. Especially a bunch of finance bros whose weekends consist of unending sports bar beers, where I assume I would be mansplained everything until my ears bleed. Probe a negative assumption. But I'm sure some of you know what I mean. I suppose you could say that I'm confrontation averse and that I'm quite laid back, and prefer to keep a conversation easy and positive. I don't like it when things are awkward, and correcting when people misrecognize me is one of those things. But I'm not terrified of confrontation. Also, my husband and I do share some mutual friends. I didn't explain that well, but our lives are not entirely separate. The way he acts towards me around our mutual friends is extremely affectionate and normal. It is only his work friends that I have never interacted with. I've also seen some people suggest that what is going on is equivalent to my husband beating me, and me hopelessly wondering whether I should break up with him. Or that I'm stupid for thinking my relationship was healthy when it clearly isn't. Like, damn, cut me some slack. I'm a real person, and this is an entirely alien and bizarre situation for me. My first reaction wasn't to assume the worst, but I do appreciate that you all have made me certain that it is a big deal. I guess I needed confirmation that the things that happened are enough proof that Josh has been purposefully lying, and they weren't just mix-ups. I'm going to talk to him today, and ask him directly why he's telling his coworkers that I'm his sister. I followed the advice of writing my points down, so that they don't get lost if I get emotional, LL. I will do my best not to let him slither out of it, and I hope he has some proof that his colleagues know I'm his wife. I know that's not the theatrical confrontation you guys were hoping for. But it's a Saturday and I can't wait. Wish me luck, thank you all. Comments. Comment 1. If he really did this to fit in, how did it take him a whole day to come up with the story? Even if it has any kernel of truth, he definitely workshopped it, LOL. Comment 2. You can tell the marriage is dead in the water since he didn't immediately confess to his work colleagues after being confronted by his wife. He's still a coward. 3 years of being single and acting single, going out with his work friends. No way he was able to be faithful. Hope OOP runs for the hills. Update. I'll just get right into it. On Saturday morning I woke up earlier than my husband. He was very hungover, so he was like sleeping a rock. But you guys will be proud of me, because I followed some advice and decided to look through his phone properly while he was sleeping. I have been on his phone so often just pissing around on it, that I had never thought to check anything very deeply. I know his passcode by heart. I checked all the expected things like Instagram DMs, Facebook Messenger, his messages, etc., and I didn't find anything that set off alarm bells to me. But I know from some comments that people who are cheating are good at covering their tracks and hiding messages, so I kept looking around. I saw he had a folder called Work, and so I looked in there, and he had a couple of Microsoft apps, Outlook, Authenticator, OneNote, etc., but he also had MS Teams. So I opened that up and had a look around. It did feel like I might have been breaking laws looking at his work messages, but I obviously had to. Anyway, I was already upset to see that he had a bunch of one-on-one chats with several female coworkers, which at first glance is obviously not an issue, because everyone works with people of the opposite gender, and are required to communicate with them. But a couple of them were vaguely flirty. Nothing I would call egregious, but there would be the occasional message between them with some playful innuendo or a wink emoji. These upset me, obviously, and they did send me into a bit of a spiral, but I didn't find anything that suggested he was having an out-and-out affair with any of them. Still, I followed someone's suggestion of screenshotting the messages and I airdropped them to myself. I still wanted some evidence of the lie, though some proof of Josh telling someone that I was his sister directly. A commenter suggested that I go through his messages and search for keyword sister. I wanted to reply to your comment and say thank you for the idea, but the post was locked, so I couldn't, but thank you. So I searched for sis on his MS Teams, hoping to find results for both sister and sis. A bunch of messages from all hands group chats, or one-on-one chats came up from other people, all unrelated and about their own sisters or whatever. But my heart dropped out my ass, LOL, when I saw there was a direct message from Jake, the guy from the bar, to Josh from a Monday a few months ago. Jake's messages said, ran into your sis at the bar, on free. She's single, right? And my husband had the fucking gall to reply, nah, she's married. I literally almost burst into flames on the spot when I saw that. I can't even describe how much I was shaking after reading those messages. Firstly, that I could have confronted Josh about this months ago. I was and still am, so furious with myself for that. Josh would have been fucking praying I didn't remember meeting Jake, or that I wouldn't mention it. And he would have been counting his lucky stars that I never did. He probably thought he was hot shit for getting away with that. And I nearly burnt a hole through the floor thinking about it. LOL. But secondly, I was just in shock that he had the balls to tell this guy that I am the one who was married, because he doesn't want anyone having it on with me. But he is allowed to coyly flirt with every fucking woman in the office. Anyway, I kept going back through the search results on his MS Teams. And eventually I got as far back as 2-ish years ago. And I did in fact find a message from Josh himself to a group chat. It said me and sis in Nusa Dua. I clicked on that and saw that he had sent it alongside a bunch of photos of him and I from our holiday to Bali. We went to Bali for our 2nd anniversary. I thought he probably chose those photos because he's shirtless and had been working out, so he looked hot in all of them. I was in tears seeing all of this, obviously. I took screenshots of those two and airdropped all of the screenshots to myself. Needless to say, I was devastated, and still am, to see all of that. I am still struggling to even process it at all. But that all happened on Saturday morning, and I immediately took myself to my friend's house. I'll call her Sophie. I went to her place to cry it out, and show her what I found. And she was extremely supportive, and probably more furious than me. LOL. At around 1:30 p.m. I got a phone call from Josh. And I hung it up immediately. He sent me a few messages along the lines of, "Where are you, baby? I'm ordering food, want some? Sad to not wake up next to you this morning." Guys, I have to reiterate how much I love this man, and how fucking heart-wrenching it was to see him still acting like nothing had gone wrong. It took so much willpower to not just pretend none of it had ever happened, and go home to him. I know a lot of you will yell at me, or accuse me of being terrified of confronting him about this. Which is not true. Please have some empathy. It takes me time to process my emotions, and I wouldn't have even been able to form a sentence if I tried to confront him immediately after seeing those messages. I needed some time away with Sophie to recollect myself, and so I stayed the night at her place. She ordered us Chinese and she helped me plan how I would confront him. I got a bunch more texts and calls from him as the evening progressed, and I eventually put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Sunday morning I woke up feeling more angry than sad. So I opened my phone and finally replied to his messages. "Coming home now, need to talk." I kept it cryptic to make him squirm, to be honest. Because I was fraught with emotions, I can't remember the entire conversation word for word. But I'll try to replay it as best I can. Long story short, I got home and he tried to hug me, but I refused him, and we just stood in the kitchen. I did confront him like someone suggested. I just said, "Why have you been telling your coworkers I'm your sister?" I wish it would have been like a movie scene, where the color drained from his face, or he immediately looked like a deer in headlights. But he didn't. It was like he had been girding himself for this confrontation for a while, because he just frowned at me and looked flabbergasted. He just said, "Huh. This made me so angry. How are you going to pretend to be stupid after 3 years of lying?" I basically said, "Don't play fucking dumb. 2 of your coworkers have greeted me as your sister, and I have proof of you telling them. And I know you're pretending to be single." Essentially, I asked him what he had to say for himself. He still played stupid. He became moderately defensive, and just kept saying, "I don't know what you're talking about. Or why would I lie about you?" I cannot describe how furious I was at this point. But I was in tears. I always cry when I'm angry. So he's trying to comfort me as if I was having some kind of irrational breakdown. I showed him the screenshot of his message saying me and sis. And I said something like, "You tell me." He just said, "I don't know what I'm looking at. And I'm confused." I got so angry that I left again, and went back to Sophie's because it felt like a dead-end road. I didn't think I was going to get him to admit to anything, and I was just getting so furious I couldn't continue. He was really upset, and in tears, which to me was evidence that he knew he was lying, and that he was going to have to come up with some explanation. He tried to get me to stay, but I told him that until you have something to say for yourself, we've got nothing to talk about. At like 8:30-ish, he called me again, and I did pick up. He basically asked for us to talk, and he said he has some things to say. So I went back to our apartment. He had written out a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper as if he had prepared a speech, and sat me down on the couch. He asked me not to say anything while he was explaining himself. I'll write down the gist of what he said in bullet points. He started by apologizing relentlessly, and admitting that he pretended to be stupid before, because he couldn't immediately think of something to say for himself. He said that immediately after he started at his job, he realized the atmosphere was like a farmhouse. All of his team members were men in their 20s and 30s that were single and fuckboys, his word. He noticed that the one guy in their team that was married would either get picked on, or essentially excluded from any and all social interactions. That included getting lunch, inside jokes, going out on Fridays, etc. These guys were friendly and welcoming to Josh, and he admitted that he was desperate to fit in with them. He hated feeling like fresh meat. So he was scared that saying he was married would alienate him from his coworkers, and at first just never mentioned that he was married. He said he did wear his wedding ring and that they had just never pointed it out. A few months in, they were all out drinking after work. He admitted that after one of his workmates saw a picture of him, and I on his lock screen, they asked him who I was, and in a moment of panic he said, "My sister." He was really apologetic at this point, and he was crying a lot. He couldn't even look at me, and he was just reading what he had written down. Anyway, he said that from then, he basically dug himself a deeper and deeper grave, because they kept grilling him about me, and wanting to see more pictures of me. So he said he had let it go on too long, and that he didn't have the balls to admit to the lie. They would always bring me up and ask shit like, "Did you give her my number yet?" Or joke that they had slept with me, etc. So when he got that message from Jake, he essentially thought it was just him taking the piss. But he didn't like the jokes they were making about me and said that I was married in hopes they would stop. They didn't. He said that this wasn't the first time he told them I was married. In fact, he had said so pretty much immediately after saying I was his sister. He said that those pictures of us in Nusa Dua were the only pictures that he had purposefully sent them and deliberately lied about, after what he called an endless barrage of pestering from his colleagues to share the pics from his Curry's holiday. He said he was really ashamed that he did that. He told me that he had never had an affair or even considered it, that the messages between him and his female colleagues were banter, and that it was commonplace to talk to people like that in the office. He also said he knows how disgusting it is, and he's embarrassed to have been acting like a fuckboy. Again, his word. He concluded his speech by apologizing again, and said that he was disgusted with himself and ashamed that he had lied for so long, but felt like he had trapped himself, and that he couldn't find a way to get himself out of it. He said he knows he could have confessed the truth to either his coworkers, or to me at any point, but that he didn't because he was a coward. He said that he'll confess to his entire office that he lied, and that I am his wife and not his sister if I want him to. He said that he will quit his job without a word if it would make me feel better, and that he hopes I can forgive him but he understands if I can't. Anyway, I couldn't really think of anything to say at that point. He went to lock himself in the bathroom, and I just sat on the couch crying. I still don't know if I can trust what he said, and a lie that extreme is just baffling to me. If he can lie like that, for so long, what else could he be lying about? But his explanation and apologies seem so sincere and genuine, and I guess to an extent what he said is believable. He has always been extroverted but very susceptible to peer pressure, especially from other blokes. If nothing else, to me it's a sign of shocking immaturity. Anyway, I packed up a bag and went back to Sophie's, and I'm still at her place as I'm writing this. She said I can stay as long as I need to. I told Josh that I needed time away from him to think about everything, and whether or not I believe him, or whether I can ever trust him again. He told me to take as long as I needed, and that he will still be there if or when I get back. He said, even if it takes a year. Right now nothing feels real. I'm still dealing with the emotional whiplash from all of this, and I can't keep food down or think about anything. I've taken the day off work and Josh told me he's going to take off the whole week. Sophie and my other friends have told me not to make a decision on anything until my head is clear. I spoke to my parents this morning, and my mom says it's just a bump in the road. But she and my dad adore Josh, so they're pretty biased. LOL. That's where I am right now. I'll take some time before I consider my next steps. I can't say whether I'm leaning towards forgiveness or divorce. But those are really only options. I kind of feel lost in a void at the moment. That's probably the best way to describe it. Just emptiness. Thanks again for all of your advice and support. I'm truly so grateful. And having this place to write down all of my thoughts has been helpful to get my mind a little clearer. This will be my last update, unless I make an edit to clear things up. All the best.